From your grave.
Coming to you live from the Sheffield offices of Darker Days Radio, this is Darker Days Radio episode number 64. I'm, of course, one of your hosts, Mike, and tonight I'm joined by Chris. How's it going, Chris?
It's pretty good. It's gloomy here in the city of Steel. Yeah, but good. Back in the UK.
Awesome.
So it's a good thing.
And we've also got our werewolf correspondent, who's going to be branching out a little bit this episode. We got Matt. How's it going, Matt?
It's going all right. It was nice and gloomy here in North Dakota as well, but now the sun's out, which means it's now just humid.
Yeah, it's humid here as well, I think. So yeah, it's time of year anyway. What's everyone been up to hobby-wise? I mean, when was the last time we recorded? Like, you did a Darkling recently, so that doesn't count because it's not a proper show. When did we last record Darker Days? It must have been just before I moved.
I think it was actually back in February that we recorded the April Fool's episode.
Ah, yes.
Which wasn't on this feed, was it?
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
We appeared on Midnight Express.
Yeah, so Chris, you moved to a different country. How's it going? How's the gaming been?
I've moved back to the UK. I'm back in the north of England, this time on the other side of the Pennines, so the northeast rather than the northwest. So I'm in South Yorkshire, and it's pretty good. So gaming-wise, there's a very good gaming store nearby called The Outpost, and they have plenty of gaming space. And what else is interesting to say about it? They stock pretty much everything, and I went along to the Guild Ball demo day. So Guild Ball is a war game created and also, I believe it's created by and also play tested by a number of people locally who are like War Machine Hordes world champions. Like, there's a really strong team here.
Whoa.
And that shows through in the extremely tight rule system of Guild Ball. And it was a blast. So I'm planning on, I guess, later this evening or the rest of this week is to review the PDF for Guild Ball, which is free to download. And basically Guild Ball is, think fantasy miniatures football, but rather than American football, it's medieval mob football, so soccer, essentially. And it is non-hex, non-grid based. It's actually, normal skirmish-style wargaming. And it's great.
Sounds pretty cool. Matt, what have you been doing lately?
Not much, just working through my video game backlog mostly, which is getting worse now that the Steam Summer Sale has started up.
Oh, pause the show. I need to go check that out.
There's nothing good, and it'll be there in another 4 hours. Don't worry about it.
Okay. We're going to do a 4-hour episode? Sweet. All right, folks, get ready. So Matt, you actually installed Secret World, and we were playing that a little bit during our Darker Days hiatus. What do you think about that game?
I think it's interesting. I don't quite like how the difficulty ramps up. Because it seems like once you get to a certain point, things get much, much harder, and then eventually you just completely bypass that difficulty. Like, there's no in-between you barely make it through this fight and haha, you just murdered everyone in a 10-mile radius.
Yeah, that sounds like a big problem with it. Because I would find that difficulty rating between zones would suddenly it never felt like a granular progressive like ramping up of difficulty. It just like you just hit a brick wall and then you were just like, screw it, let's go back and grind in the earlier zone.
And that's another thing I noticed is that the way that the quests are set up is kind of annoying. Because you get your main quest, then you can get a story quest, one of them, and then you can get 3 sub quests.
Yeah.
And even if you have there's a bunch of main quests that all take place in the same area, you have to do them one at a time. And you have no way of telling precisely what a story quest is going to require of you before you pick it up. So you can't tell if it's going to be like, oh no, this one isn't actually here. It's over like in the other side of the zone. You wanted that one you just got rid of to pick this one up.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that kind of jabs with my experience. But the puzzles, dude.
Some of the puzzles are nasty and quite hard. The one which there was the Morse code one, which was just far too quick, and I just could never.
Yeah, it was way too fast to figure out.
Yeah.
I know, like, that was actually one that me and Mike were doing, and I had just looked it up online, and Mike was like, no, I want to do this legit. And I just kind of sat there for 3 minutes, and then he was like, okay, no, just tell me what it is. I can't hear it, it's too fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the Egyptian zone, the decrypting the satellite signals is a good one, because it relies on either you're decrypting in hexadecimal, or you're doing a decryption in ASCII, or you're doing a decryption in some other thing. And that was really a good one. I felt like, that was pretty cool. I actually think one of the best puzzles, I've only played all the way up to the Transylvania zone.
Yeah, I'm in the second zone of Egypt, and that's kind of where I lost the thread of wanting to play the game.
Okay, well, I think we'll have to sort out something where I'll have to sort out the laptop, because now I've got my new computer at work. I can have my laptop set up here, and I'll tidy things up. But I'll get it set up so we can dive back in, and we'll have to get James on, because he's well ahead of me, and so hardcore. But in I think the best puzzle comes in Kingsmouth. Is that it? Yeah.
That's the first zone.
Yeah, and the one with the biblical puzzle I think was pretty solid, and following through all those things was pretty good. So, the puzzles, it just makes you feel like you can play the game as a group of players. Like, you can be 2 or 3 of you, and while you're killing zombies or mummies or whatever the hell it is, you can be discussing the puzzle that you're trying to solve, and or something like that, and that makes it feel like you're hunters. And I think it adds to making it feel like it's a role-play game.
Well, no, I mean, I like the aesthetic of the game a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, even if some of the puzzles seemed very obtuse and very moon logic-y. There's one in the second zone where it's all about looking up ISBNs, which means you have to find a specific printing of a specific book, and then use its ISBN to solve the rest of the puzzle. And if you get the wrong book, it's sending you in the complete wrong direction.
Yeah.
Like that would just kind of was like, what the hell? Why would they do this? But everything else about the game is great. The quests at the Innsmouth University, the voice acting on those characters is fantastic.
I also really like is I don't know which faction you joined up with.
Templar.
Oh, okay, interesting. So I went with the Illuminati. They're complete hipster douchebags, but I kind of like them because it kind of gets across the kind of that level of arrogance I even imagine that the technocracy would have in Mage the Ascension.
No, the Templars are actually kind of hilarious because the main quest giver you get is this 75-year-old lady who doesn't really understand how cell phones work.
Oh, right, okay.
So you'll get phone calls from her, and it's like, all right, the tech boys say that I press this button to talk to you and this button to hang.
Oh, actually, it just reminded me. There's a really good quest in the third zone of Kingsmouth, which is kind of like a summoning circle, but it's good to cut. It's a good one to look forward to. Really, that one's pretty wicked.
Oh, is that the one with the Norse lore?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah, where you're talking to Hugin and Mugen. Yeah.
No, actually, there's a different one. Then it's one that takes place in the motel.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
like I said, the game has its own very interesting lore, and I do enjoy looking through that. I just didn't like how the difficulty ramped up because, like, if you stuck around in a zone and did all of the quests and did all of the dungeon quests, you could come out either being way too powerful or not powerful enough, and there was really no way to tell which it would be. And the primary means of advancement, at least to start, is getting better skills and better skills that work together.
Yeah.
But then it relies entirely on gear, and like there's very little survivability outside of the classes that can heal. But healing power is a completely different stat than everything else. So it's that kind of incongruity doesn't really mesh in my mind because I'm coming from World of Warcraft, where they did away with that, 4 expansions ago.
I was going to say, what's the other thing? I would say one of the most, I think one of my favorite things, obviously seeing it rendered and like how they did it, the entire section which is London is awesome. Especially with like kind of that Neverwhere kind of feel to it and the market area.
Well, I'm not sure if you guys do it as the Templars, but you interact with the London Police Department as a Templar.
Oh right, cool.
And you have to help them with a couple of investigations between Kingsmouth and Egypt, and they're just like, this is completely outside of our wheelhouse. We don't know what the hell's going on. You're the Templars, so we'll just secure the scene. You go figure it out. I have to go convince a whole bunch of police officers not to puke.
No, I think overall as an MMO, it's the only MMO that I've actually is ever kind of grabbed my interest enough to want me to play it for a significant amount of time. But I would say because of the puzzles in it and the setting, I think it does lend itself better for like multiplayer, a lot more to multiplayer, as in because there's so much stuff that you can discuss, be it the puzzles or the lore. Yeah, I think it's great. We need to play more, basically.
Definitely. Anyway, getting back to the World of Darkness. Yeah, so I've been doing a little bit of gaming, playing some Dungeons & Dragons, and unfortunately my Exalted game is on hold because there's a pipe explosion in my dining room. So hopefully they'll get fixed up soon, and I can get back to running Exalted here. And I've also been on the podcast History Lessons with Caleb, Mike, and Terry, which is definitely a good time.
That's pretty great, that one.
Yep. So I'm going to be helping out with that a little bit this summer. Should be good. Cool. So I think that's it for kind of the introduction segment. So let's hop on over to World of Darkness news. All right, sweet. So the folks over at Onyx Path have been pretty busy lately with a number of new products that have come out since our last full episode. So in particular, Sothis Ascends for Mummy the Cursed has come out. I've not read it, but I believe that is the final book to complete the Chronicle arc for Mummy the Cursed, so it's definitely something people should check out. And in addition to that, we also have Werewolf the Forsaken 2nd Edition, which is pretty exciting, and I don't want to talk about it too much because we're going to have a segment about it today on the show. So that's something to check out as well. For April Fools, of course, we got World of Darkness Gothic Icons, which is a series of basically NPCs developed for World of Darkness 2nd Edition, which are Victorian protagonists, antagonists, and the like. And also, the other thing that came out was the Fallen World Chronicle Anthology for Mage the Awakening 2nd Edition. So if you want some more fiction for Mage the Ascension or Mage the Awakening, boom, there you go. Sweet. Just going down the list. In addition to that, we do know that there is going to be a freebie at Gen Con, which is the Cavaliers of Mars Quick Start. So if you're interested in that game setting being developed by Rose Bailey, definitely see if you can pick that up if you're at Gen Con, or look for a PDF in the future. And the other big thing from Onyx Path, of course, is Sardonyx, which is their new game system, basically. Their new dice mechanics that are going to be used for both Trinity and Scion. So have you guys taken a look at that? What do you think?
I've not taken a look at it yet. What with all the moving to Sheffield as well. So, but so far from you guys, I've heard good things. So, what can you tell me about it?
Okay, so it's kind of like the Storyteller system, where you have an attribute and a skill. Add those together. That's how many dice you roll in your dice pool. The reason why it's interesting and different and very well designed for Scion and for Trinity is that it allows different power levels using that same game mechanic without just adding in buckets and buckets of dice. So the way it works is that different power levels can have successes scored on different difficulties. So maybe a godlike being would get successes on a 6 or higher, as opposed to a mortal who gets it on an 8 or higher. So that's just a simple way to kind of increase the number of successes. In addition to that, there's some pretty cool story mechanics thrown in, where if you have botches and fails, you can add these additional dice to a common black pool, which players can use to dramatic effect. If they are doing a pretty tough or interesting action, they can grab additional dice for their dice pool and use those. Finally, the really cool thing about the system is that they just got rid of auto successes. Kind of.
Okay.
So the way it works now is that there are these enhancement successes. So if you roll with your dice pool and you get 0 successes, you get none of your enhancement successes. But if you get at least 1 or more successes, then any additional enhancement successes trigger. So, for example, in Vampire the Masquerade, Potence just gives you extra successes originally.
Yeah, okay.
Now, it only gives you those extra successes if you actually have a successful roll. So that kind of helps with, particular things like, of course, super strength, super agility, things like that. And it's probably actually a good fix for a lot of things in Exalted as well. So that'll be something to look into.
Well, I think from what you say, I'm wondering how they'll handle Arate, or Arete, however that's pronounced, from Scion, which is basically just throw gigantic pools of dice at the problem and hope it goes away.
It seems like from the way that they're designing the system, that's not going to be the case. Usually you do not get to add, any dice to your pool. There's only like enhancement successes and that sort of thing. The only way you can kind of circumvent that is with using your black pool or your red pool for a dramatic effect.
I think the interesting thing with allowing that change of success level is that it also means it allows characters at a particular level, so be them, say, humans, who then by some means have access to some powerful weapon. That weapon's power is easily represented by the fact that it just has a better success level that it must meet. It doesn't change, say, the dice pool that you're rolling, but it certainly changes how easily it gets successes to cause damage, and stuff like that. So that's pretty wicked. That just to do it's simple enough, and it deals with scale differences.
Yep, definitely.
I would also say the other thing with scale differences then is that, say if something is like monumentally powerful, let's just say, let's go with, say, like a mecha of some gigantic construct, right? Versus a superhuman who's still human-sized. You can mostly deal with the differences in power levels and scale there simply by going, well, normally the superhuman is obviously rolling on 6s or more to get a success. But the only way to properly represent the mecha at that level is, rather than making the mecha roll on, say, 5s or more, is you just rescale the relative success levels against each other for their actions when they're opposed. So you just kind of like go, well, the superhuman, when he fights the mecha to do any damage, he's actually back to rolling 8s or more. But that just, it makes it manageable. It still makes it manageable with the dice pools you have.
Yep.
I would hope that's something that may be in there.
Yeah, so overall, I mean, we've only kind of seen just a basic, simple proof for the basic system, but it seems pretty cool, and I'm excited to see some more.
Wicked. Cool.
Yep. And then in the Kickstarter verse, if I can remember correctly, we've had 3 Kickstarters either complete or are currently ongoing since our last episode. Those being the Dark Eras Kickstarter, which is a pretty cool one for New World of Darkness, which is going to introduce, at this point, something like 20 new historical settings
yeah,
for
it's
use.
A lot.
Yeah, but a lot of them are really cool, and that was a fun one because you got to vote on different. You got to vote on the settings that you wanted, basically. So that gave fans a lot of agency in the creation of a product. So that was a good time. In addition to that, there was the V20 Lore of the Clans Kickstarter, which is basically like a new giant clan book covering all 13 Vampire the Masquerade clans. And that was a resounding success, and seems like people are pretty pumped about that. And finally, currently ongoing is, of course, Beast the Primordial. We're not going to talk about that too much, because that's going to be an additional bonus segment at the end of the show. So we'll cover that game then.
Yeah, so I think that's all of Onyx Path news. Is there anything else, new products out that we've seen from anything else that's kind of fun?
Nope, not really. I haven't been paying too much attention. I did purchase a copy of the 5th edition D&D Player's Handbook.
Oh,
so that's cool. That just came in the mail yesterday.
Well, of course, actually, that came out, and I picked up when I arrived back in the UK, was Iron Kingdoms Unleashed, which is the Iron Kingdoms core book, which essentially allows you to play as characters from the wilderness of Western Amoran. So you can play as gators, pigs, I say pigs, Pharaoh, Trollkin and Pygmy Trolls and Tharn, and you can be a member of the Circle of Orboros or the member of a Troll Creole or something else. It's a pretty huge book. There's loads of setting content in there, and in the most recent No Quarter, they introduced rules to play as Legion of Everblight Warlocks, and also rules for Legion of Everblight War Beasts in there. And the next book, Mike, is the Scorn Empire. So we get a book totally dedicated to playing as the Scorn. That'll be really cool.
Yeah,
I think the next No Quarter is going to have more Legion of Everblight rules, because when I was looking through it, one of these sections said something about you can take a Blighted Sorcerer spell. There is no such thing as a Blighted Sorcerer. So
yeah, it's really good. I mean, the amount of content they've put out there is just ridiculous. What more is there to say about it? I can't wait to run some more Iron Kingdoms. Yeah.
Nice. All right, cool. So I think that's it for World of Darkness and gaming news. So with that, let's go talk about the classic World of Darkness.
Classic World of Darkness.
All right, so speaking of, interesting games, classic World of Darkness, controversial books, perhaps, we're going to talk a little bit about Hunter the Reckoning, specifically Creed Book Wayward and the NPCs within. So, actually, originally when I was proposing this, I was talking to Matt, and I was like, "Hey, why don't I talk about those NPC character sheets that are usually in the back of books? Because I always kind of skip those over. I thought it'd be cool to just read them and talk about them a little bit. But then I started to look at them, and they were pretty weak. I really didn't have any good ideas jumping out of the page at me as I read through those. So I think we'll just kind of cover the more interesting developed signature characters for the Wayward Creed that are provided in the book. So before we get started, let's just talk real quick about Waywards themselves. They were a form of the Imbued from Hunter the Reckoning. They're one of the Lost Creeds. So what happened with them was that originally this creed, this kind of occupation, if you will, of the Imbued Hunters was going to be for the commanders and the leaders in the kind of intended battle that the messengers were creating. Now, these messengers are alien, unknowable beings. So when they went to directly upload their battle plans, basically, into the minds of the Waywards, it kind of broke these individuals, leading to insanity, derangements, and generally just the constant flow of information was in many ways too much for them to handle. As such, the messengers kind of noticed that all of these imbuings were pretty much going wrong and not working as intended, creating these very militant individuals, which really wasn't the case. They were supposed to be more leaders and strategists, if you will. So the messengers no longer do this imbuing, typically, and really this creed is meant to be more of an NPC class, and not really to be protagonists in a story. So as I mentioned, this Creed book had 3 sample characters provided, and I'll just go through them. I wasn't super excited about them. There's a gun nut who's a total babe in the picture, and she's an amazing sniper. Not super exciting. The next one was definitely just Patrick Bateman of American Psycho, but as a Hunter the Reckoning character. So a corporate killer, I believe was the NPC name. And, just taking out monsters that are in his office. And the final one was a high school bully. Not the most inspiring, but definitely something you could use if you needed a quick character. But, guys, let's go on to some of the more notable NPCs in the book, because 2 of these characters, specifically, are very well known throughout the Hunter the Reckoning fiction, which the Hunter of the Reckoning line was at least like 65 to 75% fiction. So there are 3 really cool ones that I found were presented in here. Specifically, one of them was Peleus, who, as the description describes, is a half First Nations, half white person, born into a Southern KKK family. He was, of course, indoctrinated into the clan lifestyle, but as the years went on, his family and his friends, I'll say that in quotation marks, began to notice that he didn't look like everyone else and looked fairly impure. He was kicked out of his family basically for the good of everybody else, and kind of started to wander around. Went to Vietnam as a photographer and saw the many horrors going on over there during the Vietnam War. After he came back, he was pretty devastated about the loss of his general community and support structure. Putzed around for a while until eventually he was imbued. It all happened very fast. He was just driving along and then saw someone that was quite dead on the side of the road, but still standing, still perhaps breathing. And he just ran this individual over with his car twice. And that was the start of his adventures. He's a highly militant Wayward that can be used for some interesting effects in different World of Darkness games, not just Hunter the Reckoning. He can really highlight some of the themes of how you can't choose your family in Werewolf the Apocalypse. and in addition could be a very interesting antagonist hunter or even slasher in Hunter the Vigil.
Yeah.
So moving on from there, the book also provides some information on God 45, whose real name is Joshua Matthews. Now, Joshua originally worked in a hospital, analyzing biopsies and cancerous tissue, juggling his family life. But then one day, while he was at work, he got the call, although he didn't see anything immediately. And it's interesting to point out that no one knows what the message he received was. It doesn't tell you in the fiction, nor does he reveal it anywhere else. Later that night, he went home for dinner, and just the second he walked in, when he saw his son was wrong. The teenager was bruised, blotched, and clearly was not right. This is, of course, when his true imbuing occurred, and his mind was flooded with information from the messengers, and he was just simply overwhelmed. And in a maniacal rage, he killed his son and his wife when she tried to defend the teenager. Of course, he immediately burned down his house and then fled the scene. God 45 is an interesting character because he interacts a lot more with the imbued society overall, and really has this interesting point that he tries to justify what he's doing because he feels that the monsters around him are very cancerous, and he's not too concerned about removing some of the good flesh around it just to take out the monster itself, indicating that he might hurt innocent people. Which, I will add, is very different in the Hunter the Reckoning video game, where God 45 says something along the lines of, "This guy's about to hurt some innocent people. We've got to stop him." Which is definitely not his character at all. But then again, those video games are a little janky.
He would make a interesting potential creator of Promethean. So, because if he's if we take out the bit where he burns down the house, or at least he burns down the house to make it look like he's fled the scene and everything, you could imagine that maybe he tried to fix his son by cutting out the wrong bits and then replacing it with parts possibly from his wife, who obviously was unfortunately in the way, creating a new entity that has to come to terms with the people it's been made from. So that's my initial impression of that.
No, it's definitely a very good point. He also works very well in contrast to vampires in many ways, since they're really leeches and parasites. And reading through this character, I was drawing a lot of allusions between him and the heroes of Beast the Primordial, where he's not really afraid of hurting innocent people just to get at his enemy.
He would work really well in New World of Darkness as if you take the idea of someone from Second Sight who's able to see spirits, he would work quite well as someone that for whatever reason is able to, has taken it upon himself to hunt why can't I think of the claimed? So when someone is claimed by a spirit, they become this kind of mishmash of flesh and whatever the spirit represents made real. That would work in the idea of cutting out something cancerous in that way.
And of course, the third interesting NPC is, of course, Christy McCallum. She was abused as a child and abused as an adult. She has some military training, and most notably, the hunt overwhelmed her, and she had to leave her family. And the overall stress sort of created these two separate personalities. But the kind of interesting twist to it is that they both personalities know that they're imbued. They realize what's going on, but they don't know about each other. And in fact, each of them has formed their own sort of cell of hunters, a separate one for each. One's a very calm, investigative cell, very reasonable. The other's quite oppressive, authoritarian, and militant. And this character, I think, it's just a cool idea that you have a hunter with these two separate cells and two separate personalities. Because usually, the presentation of multiple personalities is that you have one that's evil and then one that just doesn't realize what's going on. But in this case, they kind of both know what they're doing and going on about. This is a cool character. Of course, because I was reading Beast, I was thinking about the heroes. It could be very interesting that there is a hero who has two different personalities and two very separate goals going on. Perhaps each hero is hunting a different beast.
That'd be wicked, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Or in fact, one is seeking to help beasts, and the other is, of course, hunting them.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously, because it's such a nice, balanced kind of take on the whole multiple personality disorder, is that's always an interesting one when you look at mage. So maybe each personality has access to slightly different powers, and that works well in every version of mage there is. Yeah, cool.
So there we go. I mean, that's pretty much it. Kind of a short segment here. Matt, do you have any opinions on the Wayward Creed or Hunt of the Reckoning in general?
Well, my only real experience with Hunt of the Reckoning is the game on the PlayStation 2. So, I mean, there was a Wayward in that game, but I never really played as him because when I was playing through it, the game glitched out, so I had demand on 24/7, and I only wanted to play as the character that let me one-shot things.
Nice. Okay. Sweet.
I was going to say what was I going to say, actually? There was something else.
They were good video games. From what I understand, they were fairly decent Gauntlet clones. But from what I understand about Hunter, they were very bad Hunter games.
I was going to say about the Wayward, because I know very little about... I don't know loads about Hunter, the Reckoning. The Wayward, with the whole being overloaded by information, that's kind of interesting with regard to, say, taking that concept and perhaps with the God Machine Chronicles, and when, say, an angel overwhelms a human for whatever reason with this information from the God Machine.
Indeed, yeah, it's quite similar.
And how it can then affect them. Actually, I'll tell you what these guys sound like. They sound like stigmatics for demon. So they're people that have been touched by the God Machine.
Well, the idea, from what I understand, is that they are one of the vision creeds, which
correct
means that they can see the world how it really is. It's just that, as opposed to the visionaries who see a world and want to change it, or they see a world and want to destroy all the evil that they see.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think that's it for the Waywards, and let's just hop on over to the Secret Frequency.
It's under the stairs. I want my mom.
So, this fits in quite well with what we'll be discussing a bit later. And this secret frequency concerns the watery graveyard just southeast of New Zealand, or more east of New Zealand, in the Pacific Ocean, which is the resting place of 161 sunken spacecraft. So this remote stretch of the Pacific Ocean, southeast of New Zealand, is where many broken remains of space stations and robotic freighters and so forth litter the ocean floor in an area that is 4 kilometers below the waves. Essentially, this place is identified by the world space agencies as an ideal place to bring down spacecraft that are returning to Earth, so that if they're breaking up and so forth, they can fall there without injuring humans or causing any damage on any islands. The region is also near a location called Point Nemo, the point in the ocean that is furthest away from any land mass. And it's named for Captain Nemo of Jules Verne's classic 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. What else is interesting about this? This point also kind of has the feeling of kind of that it's far away from any landmass. It's isolated. It has that kind of Cthulhu mythos feel of the nightmare sunken city of R'lyeh. And this is the full list of what is there. There's 145 of Russia's progress autonomous resupply ships. There are 4 of Japan's HTV cargo craft. There are 5 of the European Space Agency's automated transfer vehicles, and there's 6 Saarland space stations, and also lying there is the Mir space station, which ties into a previous secret frequency we did. So there's a lot of spacecrafts down there. There's a lot of space history down there. So there's more that could be said about this, but really, there's just a lot of space debris lying at the bottom of the ocean. Now, that also means there's a lot of hazardous material lying at the bottom of the ocean. It would be amazing to see what this place looks like with all these twisted wreckages that lie 4 kilometers beneath the waves. So, the other important thing is it's completely dark down there. Light does not penetrate to this depth. It's basically what's known as the abyssal zone, or at least it lies at the boundary of the bathyal zone and the abyssal zone. And temperatures hover between 2 and 4 degrees C. So how can we use this in World of Darkness? Well, maybe there is a place beneath the oceans which is feeding upon these spacecrafts, and this is all part of some world conspiracy to feed some ancient entity there with whatever celestial energies that these spacecrafts pick up. Maybe the spacecrafts are actually normally targeting somewhere, and somehow whatever's there is waiting for the right accumulation of materials to once more rise again from the bottom of the oceans. Maybe, by as happenstance, all these spacecraft that have been plummeting there have brought something with them, such as the Idigo, or perhaps something worse, perhaps spirits beyond our world from the outer depths of space. Maybe below the oceans there are particular aquatic vampires that have created some strange society, strange city that uses all these spacecrafts. Of course, the Mir space station is there, and the Femora used to use it as an outpost in the Umbra. So maybe it's after the Mir space station was decommissioned, this location used by those demonic beings is now beneath the waves. Perhaps they've been drawn there by some harrowing entity of the spirit, of the deepest parts of the spirit realm. Or maybe this is all some sort of plan by perhaps the virtual adepts who've created some strange underwater cybertronic, cyberpunk kind of dystopian location from which they perform their cyber attacks. Yeah, any other ideas, guys?
Chris, why is it that NASA is sacrificing satellites and space stations to undersea gods in this location?
I think it's more important, why is Russia sacrificing?
It's mainly the Russians, from what I'm reading. It's all Russian satellites.
Maybe it's to placate. I'm just trying to look at where the location is. I wonder what point. Okay, if you take that area of the world, what point is that directly opposite to on the globe? I wonder if it's some sort of rebalancing of energies that's been attempted.
That's probably opposite of something in
North America.
Continental Europe. No, it can't be.
No, it's in Europe, I think.
Okay.
I wonder what it's opposite. I'm just now playing with an idea. I would find it hilarious if it's opposite a location somewhere in Russia.
No, it's too close to Russia for that to be the case.
I'm talking, Western Russia, Europe area. Or maybe, yeah, I don't know. I'd have to figure it out.
It's going to be something pretty close to Central or Western Europe, I'm thinking. You know what? It might be Sheffield.
Yeah. I was going to go with it'd be weird if it was Chernobyl.
Whoa. Whoa. That's interesting.
Someone can tell us if it's opposite something, or we can work it out in the rest of the show. Anyway, any other ideas? Oh, actually, I know what it's interesting for. What if it was for Mummy? Mummy the Cursed. You know, they take relics with them into the duat. What if this was some way of setup for taking relics which are tied to the very stars? That would be strange.
Yeah, definitely interesting.
Do we have anything for Mage the Ascension? What would the technocracy make of this? Oh, obviously, it could obviously be some technocratic plan. You could easily see the Nefandi being involved in this in some manner. What else can we say about the debris? Wow, this is crazy. So, from the article this is from, the Mir space station left a debris trail which is 30,000 kilometers long and 100 kilometers wide. That's a lot of stuff that's broken up and fallen that part of the ocean.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's still livable down there.
No, it'd be interesting what's down there that could have pieced things together and started creating some... Oh, that's a film. It's a really crap one, isn't it? It's called... Is it not called Virus? Which is some, like, alien computer signal which starts which basically gets onto some, like, ship out in the ocean and starts fabricating itself a body out of machine parts. Yeah, I think it's called Virus. So you could probably play with that idea. Yeah, I can't think of anything for Changeling that fits in very well.
Well, let's not worry about it then. I think that's a good secret frequency right there. And let's move on over to the New World of Darkness.
World of Darkness 2.0.
All right, guys. Werewolf the Forsaken 2nd edition. It's finally here. And Matt, you sounded pretty excited about it.
I am. They've made quite a few changes, and I like almost all of them. It's turned the book from something that seems okay, but I don't like, into something that I actually would like to run.
Quite a few things are now a lot more playable, or like great concept, but now actually feel like they work in the game, which we'll hit upon as we go through. Pretty much, I think, as we go through certain parts progressively through the book. Obviously, the book opens up straight away with the auspices, and it also opens up with the tribes. What can we say about them then, Matt? Auspices, they haven't really changed too much.
They did change some things about them, in that all of the auspices now have a hunter's aspect, which ties into the Siskarda, which is another thing that we'll have to go over.
So essentially, what we've now got with this hunter's aspect is something like, it's almost like they bring forth a primordial kind of like primal fear in their prey, and it depends upon which auspice you're from, or what that kind of manifests as in your prey. So it can have an influence in game on what you're doing.
They also all have auspice benefits.
Yes.
So, for instance, the Iraka, who are the stalkers, they can impose the hunter's aspect of blissful on their prey. The prey has no idea that anyone is coming for them. He greets the cool night air with a smile, perhaps indulges in chemical or carnal pleasures, and never glances at that shadowy form that's inching closer to his throat.
And for instance, another good one is like the Rahu, who are obviously the full moon auspice. essentially their benefit tenacious means that for 2 turns in combat, they ignore any conditions or tilts that hinder them within combat. So essentially, they just go, yeah, you've say chucked dirt in my eyes, so I can't see. Well, they ignore that because that would be a condition or a tilt that you could use. Yeah, it's stuff like that which is kind of makes them more interesting. Auspices are more interesting.
But yeah, it makes them more distinct than just this is what gift list you have access to.
Yeah. And then, of course, I mean, we said about their hunter's aspect. So I'm just trying to find that in the book right now.
For which?
Just give us an example of a hunter's aspect. I'm trying to think of...
I did. That was...
Oh, was that the hunter's aspect? Okay.
That was the hunter's aspect for the Iraka.
Okay.
The auspice benefit for the Iraka just allows them to just suddenly appear next to their target.
That's it. Yeah. So they're quite different things, but they're still both useful in different ways. Then we've got the blood talent, not the blood talents. We've got various tribes. I'm just looking at the blood talents one. They've done the layout of the tribes and a lot of the book quite differently in the sense that they give many different possible myths, like origin myths and myths about the tribe you're a member of or about certain creatures. So they try to give you as many different options rather than one definitive myth that you have to go with. So Werewolf has been opened up in that respect with regard to, say, its meta plot or whatever you want to call it, its background material. Of course, one of the main things that always seemed a little kind of hard in play were the tribe. I want to say pacts, not pacts, vows, and they've been made a lot more playable. Like some of them, you were just like thinking, I don't know how that works in play. Like you would just think your character is never going to give up, and because of that, they're going to die. And that seems now to be brought more into balance and made more meaningful in the case of certain other ones. Do you have anything more to say on that, Matt? Or you got an example to give on that?
Well, I think the one thing they changed about the tribes is they made them more. They made them so that they have to interact more.
Yes.
Like there are times when certain tribes aren't going to have the skills in their tool set to deal with what they need to deal with on their Sisker Da, so they need to interact with someone from another tribe.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point, because not only the tribes have been made more distinct in their what they hunt, and that, as you say, builds into what skill set a particular tribe has. So they feel more like different. They feel like different schools of thought that influences the skill set you have, but it doesn't mean that one trumps the other in everything.
Right.
And it's just a better read on how to use them. I'm just trying to find the example of the vows. We can always get back to that. What's the next thing you want to bring up then, Matt?
Well, we should probably actually discuss the Sisker Da if we're going to keep bringing it up.
Yeah, sure.
Well, the main thing about the Sisker Da is that they've taken the first part of the litany that the wolf must hunt and actually made it a part of the game, in that the Uratha are compelled to hunt, and each of the tribes has a different prey that is a part of their sacred hunt. In that the Blood Talons hunt other werewolves, specifically the Pure. The Bone Shadows hunt spirits. And
also the undead, because ghosts kind of fall into that.
The Hunters in Darkness, I believe, they hunt the hosts.
Yes.
The Iron Masters hunt humans, and like corporations, like anything from the human world that would harm their territory, and the Storm Lords hunt the claimed.
Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting addition to the tribes, and really makes them quite distinct in as you say, it means they have to work together, and it actually makes a multi-tribe pack seem more plausible and more worthwhile. Whereas before, in the original version of the game, I would say the idea of a multi-tribe pack seemed a bit weird.
Well, I don't think they sounded weird, but I think the inherent hostility, even from one pack to another, didn't really lend itself to me to figure out how packs formed in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, how did all of these newly found werewolves find their first pack without getting murdered by someone?
Yeah. Okay, so what else have we got in the Oath of the Moon? We've got the people do not murder the people, which hasn't really changed. It's just the idea that werewolves don't, it's a taboo to kill other werewolves and the wolf-blooded, or members of their packs, of course. We also have the low honor the high respect the low, which is again about deference based on renown and of wisdom, but also means elders have to defer to the young, because of obviously being old means you're weak and less capable at hunting. And then we also have respect your prey, which also works out into how werewolves have to, I guess, not be naive or arrogant in their hunt, and also again with spirits is that you can't just thoughtlessly lash out at spirits, because just killing something is sometimes not the answer. Of course, we have the classic one, which is do not eat the flesh of man or wolf, because of course that is a breaking point for werewolves that leads them into their blood fury, their Karuth. And then, of course, we have the last bit of this, which is the no, not quite the last bit. The herd must not know, which is the classic. You have to stay hidden amongst the humans, because, of course, that comes from the fact that you'll cause humans to go mad seeing werewolves, and also cause humans to hunt you. And of course, it allows more balance between the mortal world and the spirit world. And the final bit is the Aratha shall cleave to the human, which is Aratha mate amongst themselves and humans. They count humans among their packs, including the wolf-blooded. So this is a major change, because we now have removed from the game the concept of the what was it called? I can't remember. I have my hard copy of first edition.
Just Ghost Children.
The Ghost Death Babies.
Yeah, the Ghost Death Babies. That's all gone. So, yeah.
I think that's a great change, to be perfectly honest, Chris, because those things only had one good story, which was, a female werewolf is impregnated with a ghost death baby. What are you going to do? That was the only story it really provided, and it was kind of squicky and weird, especially when you got into, as Matt pointed out to me previously, like all the weird ways that they justify a werewolf being forced to come to term with this child.
Well, because in Blood of the Wolf, they put in a lot of rules about how, no, you cannot get rid of the goat. You cannot get rid of this child. If you claw into your stomach and rip out your uterus, it will grow back with the child still in it. It's completely just, no, you don't need that kind of story. And even if you do want to run it, you really only want to run it once.
I mean, it would, if you really wanted to run the idea of that kind of like, that ghost child thing, you could do it as some manifestation of a werewolf character becoming too imbalanced towards spirit on the harmony scale. That I get that. That would maybe make sense, and you can still have that story. But now, you've got options, and you don't have to have that story, and you don't have to have the squickiness that comes with it.
Right, and the change to the wolf, the Aratha shall cleave to the human has become not, always breed with humans, don't breed with Aratha. It's become, keep in touch with your human side. Don't let the hunt consume you. You are still you still need to maintain that part of your being. Otherwise, you'll lose yourself.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have the other oaths, the vows, the tribal vows, and these, as I say, they feel more playable. So if we go through them, we've got the one of the blood talons, which is offer no surrender you would not accept, which means the blood talons lead violent lives, they offer no quarter and seek none. Blood talons stand at the forefront of Aratha conflicts, where bearing the throats means worse than death, it means weakness. So I think within breaking points, this means they have to basically they can't accept a surrender. They can offer no surrender you would not accept. So it works out more in like a case of like more honourable, but I think with the breaking points, the new way that the harmony system works, it makes more sense.
Well, I think it's more along the lines of, don't go back on a surrender, and don't it's like, oh haha, you surrendered, now we're going to kill you, because that's dishonorable. And don't give conditions of surrender that they're not going to accept because they're completely ridiculous, and you just want to be justified in killing them.
Yeah, I mean that's it makes more sense. Then we have the Bone Shadows, which is pay each spirit in kind. Bone Shadows know their path leads them through darkness and death. They stalk shadow. And the Bone Shadows know what horrors await them if the Aratha grow weak. So again, I mean, that's the classic, like, you have to respect spirits in the case of you have to offer them respect in case of, like, where you don't piss off spirits that you shouldn't be pissing off, but at the same time don't accept the infringement of spirits when they should know their place. Which also means, Bone Shadows have to hunt spirits that fall into their purview, which have, broken the boundaries between flesh and spirit. The Hunters in Darkness have let no sacred place in your territory be violated. This was always a difficult one I found in concept. So the idea is that their oath means that to never let friend or foe violate the hunter's territory unchallenged. I think really that just means your pack or your character looks after their territory to the extent that they also, once they've allowed a friendly pack or person to enter it, you kind of just leave it as that. I think. Again, is there anything weird with that one, Matt? I can't remember if there was something weird in first edition with their oath, or that made it seem a bit overbearing.
Not really. Most of the Hunters in Darkness now, their issue seems to be that they're the tribe who try to maintain the creepiness. Like, they try to make their territory seem dark and imposing and just use that to keep people away. So that's most of what they do now.
And then we have the Iron Masters, which is honor your territory in all things. That was always, I remember, being a bit fluffy. It didn't really seem to make sense in original Werewolf. So Matt, do you want to go through that one and what you think is the best change to it?
Well, I think it works. The way I always understood it was that to maintain, not just maintain it like the Hunters in Darkness do, but to improve it, to make your territory better, to in everything you do try to think about this: how is this going to affect where I live? How will this make where I live better? Don't do something just completely disrespectful, that would harm the people and places what you call home.
The other interesting thing, though, with this one is they've also added on the thing, which is the Iron Masters must also adapt to their territory. So even they have to recognize when things change, which actually are in their benefit, when normally it may not look like it would help them. They have to be able to recognize when it does and embrace that change, but also at the same time recognize when there are changes which are not good and eliminate them. So they're very evolutionary in their nature, as in they root out the bad things and have to embrace the good things. And then finally we have the Stormlords vow, which is allow no one to witness or to tend to your weakness. So to the Ymir themselves, they have no weakness. Stormlords hold themselves to a higher standard, such that when anyone looks upon the face of the Aratha, they see a fearless wolf. So what does this mean in play then, Matt?
Well, I think it's just, don't act cowardly. If you're feeling sick, be strong in the face of it. Always be the guy at the front of the fight. Don't be the guy who's hiding at the back because your shoulder hurts that day. I mean, I think, it's not, I think this also kind of stems. This is a problem in in Apocalypse with the Silver Fangs. I think they had something similar to this, where they also had a thing where becoming old isn't a weakness. You become weaker as you get old. That's just the way the world is. It's just don't, and it's kind of considered gauche for younger. It was considered gauche for younger Silver Fangs to point out that they were helping them. It's haha, I'm tending to your weakness. You're weak. Haha, you're breaking the tribal vow by being old. That was just kind of no, you don't do that. That's a really dickish thing to do.
Okay, so we've got within the book it talks about the shadow and resonance, the hissel. A lot of this is unchanged. And it's very similar because a lot of this information that we have about the shadow and so forth essentially got distilled down in first edition World of Darkness. New World of Darkness, we may as well call it that now, with Book of Spirits. And so it's no surprise that this now comes back in with the feeling of being refreshed, and how we've already seen some of this via the God Machine Chronicles as well, because it talks a little bit about the spirit realms. We also get a bit of information on the balance between the sun, the wolf, and the moon. So the sun is also its own spirit who has an influence on the shadow. So I thought that was an interesting little read, and just adds to the kind of explains the dynamic of the shadow. And then we've got the differences between the different areas of the shadow, and a bit on the male Jinn, who are like the demigods, who are kind of quite evil and monstrous. And we then kind of get into the meat of the rules, which is making your character.
Well, you skipped over the shape-shifting.
Oh, I did skip over the shapeshifting, but we can talk about with regard to making your character, because obviously when you shapeshift, it's going to modify your stat line. So we've got the 5 forms, as always. We've got the human, the near-human, the Garou war form, the kind of big Beowulf kind of big direwolf, sorry.
Urshul.
Yeah, form, and then finally you've got wolf form, and these all give you combat modifiers, so you can like grapple for free if you make if you hit, you get to grapple easily. Various damage modifiers. I think the main thing to say about with regard to werewolves, though, is considering these forms change your stat line with regard to your health levels, is how quickly now werewolves heal. They heal really rapidly.
Well, they heal really rapidly in Gauru form, to the point of they heal all of their bashing and lethal every turn.
Yes.
But the thing that I wanted to bring up about regards to the forms is the part about the book that I really like is that since the Sisker Da is the point of being a werewolf, everything in the book is filtered through how does this relate to the Sisker Da, and even the forms themselves relate to that.
Yeah, okay.
The human form, anyone trying to find the human in a crowd suffers a penalty equal to the werewolf's primal urge. The human form is designed to find their prey in the human world. Once they're found, they shift to Dalu, which is the big human form. And the Dalu has a rule called, and I love this, badass motherfucker. Badass motherfucker allows the Dalu to roll presence plus primal urge to cause anyone in the group that the prey is hiding in to just give them up and run away. So Dalu is the form to flush them out. Then wolf form is the form to chase them down. And in wolf form you can spend an essence to just preempt anyone's action and do it before them. So if they're running away, you can spend an essence to say, no, I'm now at your feet and biting your ankles.
Yeah.
And then once you've got them, you've got Urshul, which is the direwolf form, and they are able to apply tilts to prey when they attack them, like arm rack, leg rack, or knocked down, and they can just do that without a targeted attack. So they're the form to harry the prey, and then the form to kill them is Gauru, which is ridiculously lethal and very powerful. I would almost say too powerful, but only really when you're doing things like having one Gauru fight another Gauru, because it just means whoever falls out of Gauru form first loses.
First off, those kind of story reasons for ruling or designing the forms in that way is awesome. So great work, Stu Wilson. Secondly, I'm kind of curious how exactly Gauru form will work in actual play, because the New World of Darkness, the way it's sort of designed is that you basically have two outcomes or two processes for combat. Either someone's going to go down really quick with kind of a first strike, or the numbers kind of balance out and it's almost like a war of attrition. And when it comes to Gauru form, if you're constantly healing, bashing, and lethal, that's really going to just draw out the attrition warfare even more, especially because there isn't too much aggravated damage out there. It's not super common. So unless someone brings a flamethrower or they're fighting another Gauru who's going to have claws.
Well, no, claws deal lethal and bite deals lethal, but if you bite and then choose to swallow their flesh, that deals aggravated damage. But that's a breaking point towards spirit every time you do it.
Oh, interesting.
There are a couple of rights that the Blood Talons have access to that allow them to deal aggravated when they're doing a Sisker Da. because the Blood Talon Siskirda is against other werewolves, but that's still a breaking point towards spirit, and it's technically against the litany because the people should not harm the people. But that's part of the thing, is that the Blood Talons hunt the pure because someone has to.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I was going to say the other things that, with regard to the forms and everything, is we've got a lot more expansive description of the different senses that they have, that the Guru have access to. So the human senses, the wolf senses, and spirit senses. So, again, it kind of pushes that idea that you are a werewolf and you sense the worlds differently to a human does or a vampire does. So also in New World of Darkness, in second edition Vampire, vampires can hear heartbeats. They're more able to smell blood and see in the dark. In the same way, the Aratha, we've now got a lot more description of how those senses work into how they hunt and how they live. So
the other big change from first edition is the change to how Death Rage works.
Yes.
The Death Rage now has... Okay, each werewolf has their own specific triggers. And they get to choose which ones they want to have. And which part of that trigger will cause you to go into Death Rage changes depending on where you currently are on your harmony track, which is something we will go into after this, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, say your werewolf has the blood trigger. The passive for that is, if your harmony is balanced, the only way that you have to roll for a blood trigger is if you swallow human blood. If you're slightly out of balance, you have to roll if you taste human blood. And if you are way out of balance, you have to roll whenever you smell human blood.
I kind of like some of the triggers for Death Rage when it's the other. So if you're in balance, you are the target of a supernatural power. That's fair enough. Vampire comes up to you and does a nightmare dread power on you. You're gonna kick off. The common one is you witness a supernatural creature doing something obviously inhuman if you're slightly out of balance with your harmony. And then the passive is you come within 10 yards of a supernatural creature. So if you're too far to the spirit or too far to the flesh, if a supernatural creature walks past you, you just go into Death Rage. That's pretty mental.
And each werewolf also has a couple of triggers that all werewolves do.
Yeah.
If you spend too long in Guru form, if you take Guru form outside of combat, if you take damage from silver, or one of the things that Elodoths have is they can just force a werewolf either into or out of Death Rage.
And of course, when you go into Death Rage, say if you're in human form, over a series of turns, you go from...
Yes, that's the Wasuim, the soft rage.
Yeah. So you slowly shift towards...
Well, it's not
but it also
that.
kind of...
It's more like you know it's coming, and you have a few turns, and you have a little while to try and react. Actually stopping it is hard. You can when you're in Wasuim, you have to do one of two things. You either have to attack or move to attack something, or take your turn and roll Resolve plus Composure to try and work yourself out of it. If you roll an exceptional success on that, you end your Wasuim. If you don't manage to do that, then you enter the Basuim, which is the hard rage. When you go into a Ratha form, you no longer take wound penalties, and every other Aratha around you, within 10 yards of you, immediately goes into hard rage with you.
It's nuts. I think what that's interesting is it's kind of like in Vampire, where you get the chance to kind of ride the frenzy. and kind of steer it and control it. So to have kind of the equivalent for Werewolf is quite neat. Yeah, I really like the way the triggers work and how that relates to Harmony. Of course, there's a lot of things with Death Rage, which is some players will not like going into Death Rage, as in because you lose the player player control, and sometimes just doing a fade to black is the better thing to do for that scene, and then deal with the consequences. So I think that shows that while you could play through your character being in Death Rage and rolling all the insane dice pools as they tear people apart, the real story is not the tearing the people apart, it's you wake up without any clothes because you shredded them, and you've got a pile of body parts around you, and you're coated in blood.
No, that's not a thing anymore. I think they just kind of glossed over that. Now it's just your clothes just magically shift with your clothes magically come back.
Do they shift with you automatically?
They don't shift with you. It's just they go away. Like the right of pants is just assumed now.
Right. Okay.
Nice.
But like that's the thing. That was the thing though, is that I believe Eratha form uses down and dirty combat. It forces down and dirty combat on whenever you're attacking.
Mm.
So you're not really rolling much. Things are just dying.
Yeah. So I guess it does bring us on to Harmony. So obviously Harmony follows the rules laid out in kind of like in the way that God Machine brought in Integrity. And unlike Integrity and of course Vampire with Humanity, the idea is not to have, well, I wouldn't even say in the case of Vampires, the idea is to have a high humanity, but where Integrity and Humanity generally, a higher rating is better. Harmony, you actually want to hit the middle point, because a high Harmony represents you're towards the flesh, and the low Harmony represents that you're more towards the spirit side of your being. And there are definite breaking points that shift you one way or the other, such as like, you don't go into the Hissel for a week, or you refuse to hunt, or you violate the Oath of the Moon, or you eat processed food or stuff like that. Whereas breaking points towards spirit are things like killing a human or a wolf, or eating human or wolf flesh, staying in the Hissel too long, like for a month, or if you have Harmony 8 or more, that is a breaking point towards...
No, that's not how it works. What, at Harmony 3 or lower, it's easier to get breaking points towards flesh, which is where you get things like eating processed food.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. I've read
above Harmony 3, a werewolf can do that all they want.
Yeah, sorry, that was where...
Below Harmony 3, that's a breaking point towards flesh, which is honestly a good thing, because if you're at Harmony 3 or lower, that's where the bad things start happening to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean...
So, like, how that works is, at Harmony 5, you are fine. You don't have any Kuruth triggers besides the normal ones like Silver and being forced into it by an Eladoth, and you have a full 15 minutes in Wasuim to try and prevent the Death Rage.
Mm-hmm.
At 7 and 6, which are towards flesh, then you've got you got 1 and 5 minutes, and you have your specific trigger, which is like swallowing human blood. 9 and 8 towards flesh that's when you get tasting it, and you only have 10 seconds and 30 seconds. And at 10, you get 3 seconds to fight off a Wasuim, and that's where you get your passive trigger. And also, like, the way you also get different things, like at Harmony 10, you cannot enter the spirit world,
mm-hmm.
and at Harmony 0, you cannot leave the spirit world.
You also, at the lower Harmony levels, start getting bans. So much like a spirit, you have particular bans that influence you and harm you, or that you're compelled to conduct yourself in a particular way, just as the spirit has a ban. So again, that better reflects that you've become a creature of spirit.
Right, and also depending on whether you are too much spirit or too much flesh. If you're too much flesh, it's harder for you to shapeshift.
Yeah.
And at 10, like, you have to spend an essence to shapeshift at all. At lower harmony, you have to spend essence to prevent shapeshifting.
Mm-hmm.
Because your body's like, if you go through a scene and have not shapeshifted, your body will just do it for you.
I think that's all pretty cool, the way that harmony works with the idea of being one way or the other with flesh and spirit. Of course, there's we could get into the whole thing of like how there's particular anchors and I would say touchstones, just as you have in Vampire, which you have touchstones of flesh and touchstones of spirit, which help maintain your harmony at whatever level you want to try and maintain it at, whether you want it to be more towards the flesh or more towards the spirit. So those, of course, build on the other kind of touchstones that you can have. So I quite like those. They give a whole list of particular touchstones. And then we get, of course, the merits. There's lots of merits, like living weapon and fortified form, loads of different general werewolf merits or fighting merits. So we've got parkour. That's a particular physical set of merits. Or tactical shapeshifting, which is insanely good. So this is all about how you make use of changing your body mass and how you make use of your speed in different forms to gain bonuses in combat. That's kind of neat. Any other ones that you picked out there, Matt, which you kind of liked?
No, I didn't really pay much attention to the merits when I was reading through it because I tended not to use them when I was playing.
Yeah.
But I noticed that merits are a more important thing in 2nd edition World of Darkness.
Renown. I think the only thing to say about the one thing that turns about renown at this stage is that the rank of a werewolf now is ranked from 1 to 5. Was it like rank 1 to 10?
No, it's your effective rank when interacting with spirits.
Yeah.
The more renown you have, the more powerful a spirit you seem to be. But I think that renown changed for the better.
Yeah.
Because they changed the way that renown interacts with gifts.
Indeed,
in first edition Forsaken, you had access to certain gift lists, and the thing was that you advanced through the gift list 1 through 5, and there was at least one gift per list that used each type of renown.
Yeah.
So odds are there were going to be 2 or 3 gifts in that list that were bad for you. This has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what they have now are gifts. Like, you unlock a gift. So you unlocked, say
Shadow Gaze. It's the first one in the Crescent Moon gift.
Well, no, those are auspice gifts. Those are different.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
So let's say the elemental gifts. So you unlock all the elemental gifts, and you are an Araka. So you have the cunning renown. You can unlock the facet of the elemental gift list, which is called the Breath of Air. And so you have influence air. And you can use that to use influence the same way a spirit would. Now, say you then pick up a dot of purity renown.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you increase your renown, you can choose to unlock a facet of any gift that you have currently unlocked. So you gain a point of purity renown, you can choose to unlock Tongue of Flame, which lets you use Influence Fire. And if you gain a dot in your Auspice renown, you unlock the next level of gift in your Auspice gift list.
Mm-hmm.
So, no matter what, you are going to have at least 1 point of honor, 1 point of renown in any gift that you use, and there's an incentive to get more gift lists, because then you have more points to put your facets when you increase your renown.
Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, the way that the gifts work interact well with either your tribe or your auspice. Like the technology gift for the Rahu involves just causing the technology to break down, whereas the same gift for I think the cunning renown causes it to just stop working or hinder or actually actively harm its user.
Yes, yeah. It does seem, because I was looking at first edition gift lists and the way that you gained gifts, and it just didn't seem, because you could gain gifts in a non-linear, in a non-progressive manner. Like you could learn the 3-dot gift in a particular section without having to learn the second one or the first one even. And I don't know. There seems to be better flexibility in the way that you can learn gifts now.
Mm-hmm. And there's also wolf gifts, which are easier to learn and cost less experience, but they're also slightly less powerful. Like that's a change that they were talking about during development of this game, that they wanted you to have less gifts, but they wanted the gifts you had to be more powerful and more effective at you actually pulling them off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, overall, I think it does look better, and yeah, like just more flexibility, and as you say, you can pick up by separating things into facets rather than having them as a linear progression. It makes it quite clear that you can open up all the gifts and still there's something you can always use.
Mm-hmm.
And that's quite wicked, really. And of course, you can just spend experience points to learn new facets of a gift. You don't have to, you're not just limited by learning more renown, but learning more renown helps open up more gifts anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we've got tons of rites, which I don't think there's much more we can say about the rites. They're obviously ritual magic, which is performed by werewolves. There's nothing particularly new here, I would say, other than I would hope we'll mostly see more rules on creating those, perhaps in some book, much in the same way as like we've got rules for the creation of different blood sorcery that came out for vampire. So not much there to say, I don't think. Fetishes and talons, which are obviously talons are smaller, shorter effect or less powerful version of fetishes, where you've essentially put a small piece of a spirit into an item. And again, there's a lot of examples there, such as the Storm Coil, which looks like an odd little lamp of copper or iron, which contains the ability of the Influence Electricity 3 and can overload a building's power supply, for example. So there's a few examples of talons and fetishes. An example of fetish is the Rust Talon bindings, which is heavy chain manacles covered in a patina of red and brown corrosion effect. Anyone bound by the fetish takes a point of lethal damage and try to use any supernatural power, and you do a Clash of Wills roll. So that's kind of cool. Anything else that stands out in that section of character creation? I think we pass the bit about in character creation before was with regard to how you build your character and then you build your pack.
Oh no, we didn't go over that.
Okay, or is that in the next chapter? I was just flicking through.
Well,
here.
the next chapter goes over adding the non-werewolf members to your pack, which is different in that werewolf packs are now no longer just the 5 in them. You can bring other people into your pack, and which include wolf-blooded, which are different than what they were in first edition, and even other supernatural creatures or humans who are quote-unquote in the know.
Yes.
Anyone who can help you in your Sisker Da.
So essentially, they're really putting forward the idea that your pack is not just your characters; it is the wolf-blooded who support them, and perhaps are better characters to roleplay at certain points within the story, because obviously the life of a werewolf is quite a brutal thing, and sometimes it means that it doesn't quite mesh with certain aspects of the setting. And then obviously you have human characters, which you can either represent as full characters using the World of Darkness rules, or you can represent as just like a collection of skills representing how they aid your pack in certain aspects of their hunt. And again, by also allowing other members of the pack to be other supernatural creatures, it really builds upon, again, the crossover nature of New World of Darkness. I think it's always been quite open, werewolf, that the idea that sometimes a werewolf pack has to go off and do something at the other end of the country, maybe, or in another part of the city. And yet they've got something important to protect, or they're going to be gone for a long time, and they may be friends of, and they're a member of a pack, is, say, a particular vampire who's like, yeah, sure, we'll look after your territory. I know some friends. We'll get them in. Everything will be fine. And when we need some help, you guys will turn up and tear apart the rival vampires for us. So that's still in there, which is really good. I like how werewolves aren't immediately hating on the vampires, and how that's still there with all the other different supernatural creatures we now have in World of Darkness. You can easily see, like, say, a Bone Shadow and, say, a Sin Eater getting on really well. Because again, it's that whole thing of, like, a Bone Shadow would also respect how a Sin Eater keeps a balance between the land of the living and the land of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I would put a mummy in the group. That would be kind of crazy, but yeah. Of course, we've got all the rules, because now second edition books have all the core rules in there. And then we get into the rules on spirits, unless I've missed anything you wanted to pick up there, Matt, before?
No, not really. And spirits are mostly the same as they were in first edition. The major differences are they included specific rules on how people become ridden and claimed.
Yes.
Which works like a social combat.
It's kind of like a social combat with all the conditions and tilts, so that I think we've already seen this in we've seen a similar table, a flowchart in the God Machine Chronicles, with how a ghost interacts and then manifests, and we see the same thing with spirits, where they reach across the gauntlet, they manifest, or they reach and then they possess, and then obviously there's a series of possessions until they claim a person. So you have this flowchart of going from a particular action causing a condition, causing a manifestation, and whether you need to have certain powers that have the reaching ability to do so. So it's very much there is a particular kind of like routine to follow to play these out, if you need to play them out in that particular way. And given that as part of the game you're making not just werewolf characters, you're making wolf-blooded and human characters who are members of the pack, that's kind of useful when potentially one of those human characters could become possessed by a spirit. There's obviously a lot of different powers for spirits. They're Numina, and of course, using the World of Darkness God Machine Chronicles, you get a whole load of other Numina. Nothing particularly jumps out as being like, oh wow, that Numina is like completely scary and overpowered or just terrifying. And that leads us into the different types of prey. So of course we still have the pure tribes. We have the Fire Touched, the Ivory Claws, and the Predator Kings. I didn't spot anything they really changed there with the pure tribes. I'm sure we'll get a book that obviously recasts the pure tribes with the new rule system.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think the one which will be the most interesting to look out for with changes, though, will be the Ivory Claw, who are obsessed with purity of lineage. Now, because of course we have werewolves now being able to interbreed, and the changes to wolf-blooded, because wolf-blooded now is not just something that occurs because you inherit it. You can become wolf-blooded if you're driven to lunacy by seeing a werewolf.
I love that rule. It's if you get a dramatic failure on your roll to resist lunacy, you become wolf-blooded.
I really like that. It basically shows that you're touched by the madness of the moon and become closer to the werewolf.
You go so crazy you make Luna notice you. Congratulations.
Yeah. So how that all ties in with the Ivory Claws is going to be quite interesting, I think. Whether they rate one lot of wolf-blooded over another and one lot of werewolves over another, depending upon how far back their lineage of they go. Okay. We also have some example characters that we then get rules of spirits. Spirits, as typical. The book tells you go by predators. And of course, go by Book of Spirits. It has a whole list of spirits. Yeah, the rules aren't going to be quite the same anymore, but there are plenty of ideas in those books to inspire you for spirits in Werewolf, and you just need to rework the rules. For the most part, most of the attributes and so forth will be the same. You'll just have to reference slightly different Numina. That's what I'll say about that. The hosts. I'm not too sure if we've got some better information on why the Aslus, that's the spider host, and why the Beshalu, the rat hosts, are doing what they're doing. But we've now, obviously, they haven't really changed whatsoever. They're the horrible creatures that infest you and slowly become these half human, half rat, or half spider creatures before they finally become some hideous, gigantic monster as they gather together more shards of the Plague King or the Spinner Hag. Of course, we've got humans. They represent a particular threat to werewolves, and then we've got the spirit-ridden. Again, the idea hasn't changed. We've just got better rules on how that process of becoming spirit-ridden and becoming claimed occurs. And then we get on to perhaps the biggest addition to second edition, or at least since the biggest addition to Werewolf since the Night Horrors book for Werewolf, the Forsaken, which is the Idigum. So we get again the same information that the far back in time, the Idigum were imprisoned on the moon.
Because Father Wolf could not kill them. He could only... The only way he could stop them was to imprison them on the moon.
And some of the Idigum instead hid deep beneath the earth, and they are known as the Earthbound. So we have two different types of Idigum, the Moon Banished and the Earthbound. And of course, the Moon Banished have only returned to Earth since humans set foot on the moon. And so obviously the Idigum essentially, hitched a ride on various spacecraft that have been to the moon and back. what can we say about the idiom? There are many ideas of what they are. They could represent concepts that no longer exist. They could represent concepts that have yet to exist. They could even represent humanity itself, because humans don't have a reflection in the spirit world. Or maybe the idiom are that thing. The idiom are really like proper body horror level of weirdness. We're talking, you know, like The Thing. They're constantly shifting and changing their shape until, of course, the idiom go through a process where they become coalesced. So that basically means the idiom finally take on a particular ban and particular banes and particular influences, though these banes and bans are very obscure and strange and normally depend upon the location and the conditions and the things around them when they become coalesced. The idiom can also forfeit that being coalesced and become back to being what is known as formless, so that they can once more be shifting in form and nature and take on new bands and new banes. And in fact, idiom, when they're formless, they have constantly shifting banes and bands, which makes them incredibly hard to fight and difficult to destroy. So they're quite cool. I really like the idiom, and I like what they've built upon there. The main theme is that for whatever reason, the idiom are searching for the answer to some obscure question, which, if they finally find the answer to that, it may mean the idiom becomes fully formed and a new concept or new creature or new thing within the real world, within the world of the flesh, will come into being. So they're very alien, and the potential for them could be world-shattering in that sense. They have many, when they become coalesced, they have access to this numerous powers that make Numina look like you're being tickled. Some of these are are horrible, and allow them to manipulate ghosts or create servants who are kind of strange. So they can make claimed, or they can make they can touch a werewolf and make them their servants. They've got various dread powers, which crazed evolution, which is they can warp creatures in the real world. There's a lot of different potential for them here.
One thing you didn't go over is the reason why they would want to go back and forth between coalesced and not. Coalescing makes them more powerful. It gives them influences over the spirit world, and it allows them to start using their essence shaping and dread powers.
Of course, yes.
But formless idiom are basically impossible to kill, but they are also very limited in what they can do. Coalesced idiom are dangerous and are much more dangerous, but they have banes and can be beaten down and re-imprisoned.
Yeah, they are. The idiom, the way they're set up, are a very tricky opponent. I would say tricky on the same level as, say, the Gentry from Fae, because again they have very particular particular pledges and bans and banes that you have to find out to defeat them. And then we get a whole list of example idiom, some of which I really like. Matt, you said you like the Deceiver Loon, who basically appears as one of the loons.
No, the one who acts like Father Wolf.
Oh right, okay, cool. I really like the one which is let me just flick to it. The Heavenly Fire. So it's an idiom that was on the moon that grabbed onto and wanted to understand, and it kind of got touched by it. The mote of an alien star that had gone supernova, and so this spirit is kind of very is almost like cosmic energy out of control and is a star waiting to be born. I really like that one. It has a lot of potential there. It kind of has the feeling of, say, the Quishilim from Prometheum, but like gone totally out of control. So I really like that, and the idea it also has like this cult of humans that think it's some sort of god of the stars. I really like that. Any other ones that you really like, Matt?
No, not really. I didn't really read much about the Idagam. I spent more attention reading about how the changes to the Forsaken themselves and what they hunt, because the Idagam they're kind of the focus of the Chronicles themselves. Like, if you're doing an Idagam game, it's completely different than anything else you're doing in Forsaken.
Yeah, because that's the point. Like, if, as we said with the tribes, they all hunt a particular thing, whether it's other werewolves, spirits, humans, the claimed, and the Idagam are outside of all of that. So none of the tribes are set up to deal with the Idagam on their own. And it's also interesting how even the pure tribes don't even know how to deal with the Idagam. They actually think they're some like wonderful alien monstrous spirits that they can use to their own ends, and they're so totally wrong on what the Idagam are, and often get completely slaughtered for that naivety. The other thing we get in the book is we get a number of sample hunting grounds. So these are locations for Chronicles, and the one that took my interest is the one which is set in Bristol in the United Kingdom. And it has a very kind of Innsmouth kind of, the Idagam has elements of Cthulhu in there, and the spirits and the claimed that come up onto the shores are very fishy and tentacly, and that's kind of fun. So yeah, I mean, there's one setting which is Basra in Iraq, and there's another one which is Holmes County, Ohio. So there's quite a few different sample locations there. Matt, did you look at any of the sample locations? See anything that stuck out there? Oh, there's a Tokyo one. That looks interesting.
No, I didn't.
I've not read the Tokyo one. That looks cool. There's a little sidebar about Tengu. So Tengu are bird demons in Japanese folklore. So it talks about them as being some sort of spirit. Nice. And then, finally, what do we get? I think we get the storyteller section on how to run Werewolf, and there's particular tilts and conditions for Werewolf that are in the appendix. Is there anything else that you want to bring up towards the end of this then, Matt?
Well, two things. One thing that I noticed is that there are the Sisker Da condition, which is what the werewolves go under when they initiate a Sisker Da, has different benefits depending on which tribe is leading it, to better help them in their hunts. Like the Iron Masters can choose which lunacy condition gets inflicted on someone who fails their role when they see a werewolf. These Stormlords allow them to just sense if someone is ridden, urged, or claimed. The Hunters in Darkness let them see how the Gauntlet has been affected in their vicinity, so they can see if it's been strengthened by the spiders or chewed through by the rats. The Bone Shadows allow them to attack spirits with their teeth and claws. And the Blood Talons, which doesn't seem as good, just lets them see renown brands.
Okay. And of course, there's one appendix. I was going to say, in the appendix, there's also the appendix totally devoted to wolf-blooded.
Yes.
which is wicked.
Correct. Yeah, because now that wolf-blooded aren't just the guys that werewolves need to sire children,
Yeah.
they have their own complete rules, and they're now like the ghouls for vampires in that they have, depending on whether they are closer to Father Wolf or Mother Moon, they get different powers. If they're closer to the wolf, they get spirit powers, like they act as locusts, or they can sense spirits, or when they fall asleep, their id manifests as a spectral form to go out and fulfill their vices for them. Or if they're closer to the moon, they have physical things, like they can go into death rage, and they assume Dalu form when they do so. Or quite possibly my favorite one is Second Skin. The wolf-blooded was born with the pelt of a wolf, not attached to them, but a living skin that rushed from her mother's womb at the same moment. It breathes, in a way, it has a heartbeat, and is clearly alive. It doesn't think, but it does feel, and the wolf-blooded has a sense for its feelings. They need to feed the pelt, and they need to wear it once a week. If 7 days have passed when they haven't, they must need a resolve plus composure roll whenever they're in a stressful situation, or they have to run back and put it on. But the benefit to that is, when they put it on, they assume wolf form.
That's nuts.
There's another one that, like they transform during the full moon, or they have a layer of wolf skin underneath their human skin that gives them 1/1 armor at all times, but it's vulgar as hell, and anyone who sees it has to make a lunacy roll.
They're cool. They're really cool. They're so much more interesting than what First Edition Wolf-Blooded were. And I think that's to the benefit of the game, so that not everyone has to play as... many more people play werewolf in the sense that not everyone even has to be a werewolf, and there are benefits to not playing one of the Aratha and playing one of the wolf-blooded.
One thing more specifically, becoming a werewolf does make you lose your wolf-blooded merit, but becoming any other kind of supernatural does not.
Weird.
So yes, you can be a mage who is his own locus.
That has so many repercussions. I would most probably immediately house rule that any wolf-blooded that becomes a mage is tied to the supernal realm of spirit and life, so to the primal wild, because it's the only thing that makes sense. Cool. I think that's pretty much Werewolf 2nd Edition. There is a lot in there, as always. There's a lot of good stuff, and it makes Werewolf... it just makes it so much... It looks... Like, I enjoyed Werewolf the Forsaken, and now I think I'm going to enjoy running it even more when I get around to running it. I already have an idea for a Chronicle in my head, because I never got to complete the Chronicle I ran, so... it wouldn't take me much to get started and start running it.
Cool. All right. So, yeah, that's Werewolf 2nd Edition right there. And, guys, I think we should keep this marathon episode going and talk about Beast.
Go.
I told you it was going to take 4 hours.
Yeah, you might have been right.
I guess we can skip on to the next segment then.
Indeed. So let's move on to a topic of highbrow storytelling.
Topics of highbrow storytelling.
Matt, Chris, it's been an emotional week for Beast. It's been a lot of highs, a lot of lows. Actually, I probably should have reversed that. There was a bunch of lows. Now it's getting we got some highs.
Some very specific highs.
Some very specific highs. So let's tackle this. Just to give people a little bit of background, the Beast Kickstarter is currently ongoing, and there's been some controversy surrounding it. There's a lot of cool ideas, but there's also ideas that people have looked at and they don't agree with. They don't like some of the direction of the game. So as such, there's been some back and forth between the community, the developers, and currently, Beast is actually going to be going through a slight revision. So some things are going to be taken out, replaced, reworded specifically, and it's going to be interesting. And I personally think it's only to the benefit of the game. It's really good that they're taking another look, and they're going to just fine tune it from here to give us the best Beast experience.
I agree. I mean, I was not happy with the preview before, but I think that what Matt put out yesterday sounds like a game that I would want to play.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that, because I haven't had, what with all the moving and everything, I've not had a chance to read the original Kickstarter preview, but what I read of the revised introduction, it sounds really great. And it seems like a playable game without being... and addresses some of the issues that have been brought up by other people. So where do we start with this? Do we want to start with what Beast attempted to deliver and what problems it ran into and how that's now been addressed?
I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. So, Beast. The original draft version that we got portrays beasts as these nightmarish creatures that feed off of the fears of humanity. Specifically, they need to sate this soul that they've been bonded with. And beasts were previously human. There's been a lot of... with the original text, there was a lot of debate about that, but I think it's mostly clear that they were human and then they became beasts. They were not.
It's the way that it's worded is that you were basically human, but you were always going to be a beast.
Right.
You find your primordial soul and then become one with it.
Indeed. And after you become this beast, you effectively need to put fear into humanity to sate your own hunger. You do this in many different ways, by hoarding things or abusing others. And this allows you to keep your feral self under control, and also grants you powers and the ability to survive. Because in particular, there's a sort of superego reaction from the mass of humanity in the form of heroes, which are individuals that will hunt down beasts and attempt to just destroy them outright. So beasts have these different hungers, but they don't need to specifically feed them just by spreading fear, actually. There's a way for them to almost latch on to the feeding process of other monster supernatural types, such as vampires, werewolves, etc. And by working with these other societies, they can kind of find a slight workaround with their hunger issue. And Beast, as it was originally portrayed, basically focused on these two aspects, either fending off heroes or working with other supernatural types to kind of forward your existence. And those were the two main things that it did. And
that's also where some people had a lot of problems.
Right. So there wasn't too much for you to do. Yeah, Matt, why don't you take over?
Okay. The one thing that was kind of a problem with the game is that when it comes to dealing with other supernatural creatures, it does this thing called kinship, which is the idea that all supernatural creatures are descended from the Dark Mother, which is the mythological creature in Beast from which all beasts descend. That vampires, werewolves, changelings, Prometheans, sin eaters, mummies, fetches, and inhuman spirits are just lesser versions of beasts. And that there are other things that are fundamentally human, like mages, psychics, slashers, and hunters, that are fundamentally human, but have touched enough of the beast to still be considered kin. Specifically, the only creatures that are playable in the World of Darkness that are not affected by beast rules are demons. And the other thing is that beasts can just sense other supernatural creatures, and that all supernatural creatures have at least a good opinion of them, unless the beast specifically does something to make them hate them. So all supernatural creatures love beasts.
Which I will note is kind of a cool inversion of Disquiet from Promethean.
Right. But it does kind of seem rather odd, because what beasts do seems somewhat at odds with what werewolves do. Because it does say that beasts, since they feed on fear and suffering and need to inflict it on others, are gigantic fountains of very negative resonances that spirits can feed off of. Like, if a beast somehow manages to get into the shadow, then basically every spirit in a 10-mile radius is going to come and feed on them.
Yeah. So beasts are actually, again, a very interesting inversion. You're going to hear that a lot when talking about what's presented in Beast of the Primordial. So we just heard about Werewolf, the Forsaken 2nd edition, how Harmony works, where you really want to kind of stay in the middle. You don't want to go too far to either the spirit side or the human side. And Beast is actually the opposite. So you have this sort of power stat called...
It's like a combination of a power stat and your supernatural resistance and your morality. It's a lot of weird things.
Yeah, and it's known as satiety. So the way this works is you can either be, very hungry, which drives your other soul, known as the horror in the updated version, to cause you to hunt and feed. Or you could be very full because you've been maintaining and hunting and sating yourself. And those are really the two good situations where you get the most powers and benefit. But there's also this middle called lukewarm. And if you're in that state where you're feeding but only just enough to survive, you're actually the most vulnerable. That's when heroes can affect you with the most weaknesses, and you have the least access to your powers. So it's a very tenuous rope that a beast has to walk. But yeah, it's definitely kind of counter to how Werewolf is presented, which might work, it might not. There's some interesting notes in there, just as a side tangent, that the primordial dream, which is kind of the other world, the other plane, presented in Beast the Primordial, is very, very easy for werewolves to navigate, which is kind of a neat little crossover idea.
Well, it's closest to the spirit realm from that, but it's more like the collective unconscious of humanity, like the realm of dreams to which all humans go to.
Well, yeah, but that's because it's essentially the Temenos, which is in Mage, and that ties in with the idea of the dream time from native Aboriginal ideas. So I think there's a lot of parallels there. The reason why werewolves can navigate the primordial dream is because if you look at it from a mage perspective, the primordial dream and the spirit realm are two halves of the fallen reflection of the supernal realm of spirit and life. So I think there's things you can grab there that kind of make why that kind of makes sense.
So yeah, kind of bringing it back, and the kinship concept, I think is okay. I think it's definitely something we can work with. It does seem a little odd that other supernatural creatures instantly like them, but if they kind of worked it in somehow to be more similar to the updated Predator's Taint, I can't remember the name of it, in Blood and Smoke and Vampire 2nd Edition, that may be better, just to present some rules for the some initial reactions between other supernatural types and the beasts themselves. That can be pretty cool.
Beasts do have powers with their kinships. Like, they can pretend to be a creature of that type. For all effects, like, they will just be treated like they were a werewolf or like they were a vampire. And if they have a high enough satiety, they will superficially appear to be that type. And they can spend willpower points to give them extra dice. And they can gain satiety off of watching them hunt and feed. And another thing that is kind of like another reason why I'm not really sure why changelings in particular would like the beasts is they can travel from the primordial pathways to any realm, and they can force their way into any supernatural space.
Oh, yeah, it's super dangerous.
See, I don't. You see, with that's kind of weird because I don't know how comfortable I am with the idea that beasts can penetrate straight into one of the gentry's realms in Arcadia. I'm happy enough with beasts penetrating into the hedge because the hedge is kind of that membrane between worlds, and also you can go into the hedge in order to enter dreams through hedge gateways. But I'm not too sure about penetrating into Arcadia. That just seems a bit too... It kind of removes the... It's kind of like... I'm not too comfortable with the idea of being able to remove a problem for changelings, which is a problem and inherent to their nature and to the game and what they're fleeing from.
Right. And like the fact that what beasts are and what they do is dangerously close to what the gentry do to the changelings.
Yeah, because they're feeding on things. I mean, technically, changelings are also kind of the same in that they feed on, emotions. But yeah, I'm not too comfortable with that really for changelings. It doesn't seem right. I would, if as a changeling, I'd be more committed to killing a beast because they seem very much like some of the fairy tale creatures that can be spawned in the hedge.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's one of the one aspect of the beast's kind of existence, and the other one is, of course, the heroes. So, Matt, let's talk about the heroes as they currently stand, unedited.
Okay. One of the things that the game does is it informs opinions. Like, it says beasts are quote-unquote the good guys, that by inflicting fear on people they are accomplishing something good, and therefore heroes are the bad guys. But the problem with heroes is that for a hero to rise up, they have to have been touched by a beast. A beast has to do something to them which causes them to lose integrity. And a hero cannot become a hero unless their integrity is 4 or below. So these are very screwed up individuals, and the beasts just kind of make them sort of worse. And the thing is it says that heroes are bad and wrong, but like, they do sort of have a point. There are beasts that do very, very terrible things, and they probably should be killed, and heroes are probably the people to do that killing, because they are empowered to do so. But the text just says, no, they're wrong, they're bad, you should hate heroes.
which seems really weird because I think the main thing we ever get from World of Darkness games is that there's never a black and white in that. Vampires are horrible creatures, but also the way you can play vampires, that you can have vampire characters who are actually realize that sometimes the worst elements out there are the very humans that they predate upon. And also some of the hunters out there are horrible people because they go to ridiculous lengths, like murderous lengths, in order to target a vampire. So who is more the monster, the hunter or the vampire? At least the vampire is maybe following to is sometimes loses control to the inherent beast within them. A hunter is taking mindful actions to commit murder and torture in order to chase and torment a vampire. And you can say much the same way about other antagonists in other games. It's never a true black and white. Whereas the impression I got from what I read is that there is a very black and white between heroes and the beasts.
It's very I wouldn't say black and white, but I would say that the way it's presented, heroes are straight up, they're just bad. That's the only way to get around it. So just to use some examples directly from the text, heroes are just very single-minded. They're very focused on their objective. They don't care if they're hurting other people or abusing other people to get at the beast. And that's how they kind of try to show you that the heroes are bad, and in this sort of narrative that they're creating, the beast can be a protagonist. But the problem is, the reason where this really all starts to break down with the what we currently have for heroes, the unedited version, I should specify again, is that the heroes are the ones protecting humanity from these abusive creatures.
Right. And another problem with the way they do it is that they seem so hell-bent on making you dislike heroes. They make some really weird parallels. Like, there is a line in the book here that says that heroes are men's rights activists, they are internet trolls, they are the people who start arguments just to start arguments because they just don't understand that beasts are good things, and they cannot understand that beasts are good things because they are heroes and they just don't do that. And heroes blame the beasts, and it's like, no, they aren't here. Like, it's a very bad way of doing it, because if your antagonists are sympathetic, that's a good thing. You shouldn't want to bend the system in such a way to make your antagonists universally evil, because that doesn't really cause conflict in the game. They're just people there to kill.
Yeah. It's a very... It comes across as very... I just don't feel comfortable with that, because then by making the whole thing that the heroes are male right activists, by making that parallel, what's that say then about beasts? Because also there's the whole thing of what the beast's nature is that we have to be accepting of the bad things that beasts do, and what that is a reflection of in social commentary. It's very mixed up and messed up what's in here.
Right, and for the most part, heroes are interesting. Some of them are characterized better than others, and they get some interesting powers, and their mechanics are interesting. But then you have a character that wears a fedora, is a tall, skinny man in a trench coat, and his character quote is, "Never fear, milady, I've come to kill this foul beast."
You see, when you read that to me, I was like, what the hell have they based this on? Have they based it on Fraser Crane? Or have they based the character on Dresden Files, Harry Dresden, which is just... Or Jim Butcher, really. It's a weird one.
And the other example characters are a housewife who came home and saw, and one day just her son was different, and she told her husband. Her husband was like, okay, no, I'm calling the cops, and she fled, and she's been hunting down her son all this time, and she's just thoroughly disturbed, really screwed up, but that's a more sympathetic character. There's another character in here that is she's a teenage girl who a beast tried to steal something from her. It's not really specified what, and she followed the beast to its lair, which is in the Primordial Dream, and she managed to kill the beast, but then his lair collapsed and trapped her in the Primordial Dream. So her body is wasting away on Earth while she's trapped dreaming, and she is forced to wander the dream, killing beasts to sustain her soul and try and get back to her body. Like, that is an amazing character. And there are people on the internet who are trying to figure out ways why she's a bad person because the text says that she's a bad person.
And they should stop. They should really stop with that, because that was a cool character. Which was that? What was her name? Like Amanda? No, Melanie. Melanie. That was it. Yeah, that was a really cool one. And that's the sort of like inspiration we're kind of looking for when it comes to heroes. Like, hey, that's a cool concept. And something you can really work with, because the example I've used multiple times when talking to you guys is that when you look at the hero beast dichotomy and maybe compare it to, say, like the Beauty and the Beast, which is a pretty common story that a lot of people know, it's not so much that Gaston is a bad guy, it's that the Beast is a good guy, and that's kind of what you need to be looking at. Gaston is not a very friendly person. He really just wants to save this girl so that he can then marry her. But the Beast, despite his wrongful acts, is actually, in fact, a good person, a protagonist.
Given
and I think I was kind of missing with the original version of this.
Yeah.
Well, I think the one thing I said is that Gaston, like, he quote unquote did a right thing in trying to save a girl, but his motives weren't the ones that he said he had. He wanted to kill the beast so he could get the girl, but he was telling everybody else, oh no, like he's kidnapped this girl and does things, which is true. He did kidnap Belle. It's like the people were going to rise up and fight the beast. It's just he was doing it for the wrong reasons.
Precisely. Yeah, I think that's a phenomenal way to put it, Matt.
I was going to say is that when you take the Gaston character, a hero like that would be a perfectly fine character, against a totally different protagonist. And when I say protagonist, a different monster that is actually a monster, like is bad. Yeah.
Right, and like that's the thing, is that we haven't really gone over the Beast splats, but heroes are affected by what Beast created them.
Okay.
Like, a hero created by a tyrant becomes a tyrant. A hero created by a collector, like, tries to claim the things that they want from the beasts they kill, and they become obsessed with material wealth. Predator heroes just want to kill, and they know that, but they want to make sure that the things they kill are beasts, but they are still driven to murder. Nemesis heroes try and kill beasts out of a sense of right and wrong, and Ravager heroes just want to break down everything about heroes and about beasts, and it becomes so distrusting because they believe that everybody is trying to break them down.
Indeed. So there you go. You've got the heroes and the various other supernatural types, and that's really the two things that beasts do. They sort of exist and interact with these two groups, and that's actually kind of another weakness that we noticed with the original version, was that there wasn't really too much for beasts to do amongst each other, and really it didn't seem like there was too much variety. Other than what we see in other World of Darkness games, besides having to fight the heroes off at intermittent points, so that seems to be another thing that they're going to be fixing up in the updated version. Do you guys think we should talk about the updated version more? Or is there something else, any other points we need to make?
Yeah, I think there's some good points in the update. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
The thing is, I think the updated version changed the way that the beasts are framed, but the version as it was presented shows an alarming lack of insight in some ways into how it's perceived. And there's certain characters where there's certain points in the book where it seems like, being edgy and transgressive at the table is what you're supposed to do, and you're supposed to be making the other people uncomfortable in the ways you feed and the things your character does.
Okay.
Sure. So the updated version, it does reframe things. It rewrites significant portions of the introduction. That's all we've seen right now is really the kind of intro chapter. But overall, I think it's definitely an improvement. It's as both Matt and Chris did say, it's a version that they would actually like to play now, and I would agree with that. I'd be much more interested in exploring some of the new ideas and concepts that were presented. Specifically, one of the things that they bring forward, which was definitely in the original text, but kind of fell to the wayside, was the sort of mythic resonance of the beasts themselves. So now the beast is focused on using fear, revulsion, to teach lessons to humanity, which probably sounds a little weird, but what it's kind of getting back to is the fact that these different stories, horror stories about beasts, passed down throughout the ages, were really meant to teach lessons to people, to humanity, and that's what the beast now embodies. And it does seem rather brutal that some beasts may do this in very abusive ways. Not all of them, though, but some do, which kind of just harkens back to older times, the atavisms that the book keeps alluding to. That being, ancient times, ancient practices, as opposed to the powers of the beast, which are also known as atavisms, and how society used to be just much more brutal, and because of that, that's how laws and justice was passed down, and stories as well were just that much more shocking.
Yeah, that builds into the whole. I think that's the right way to look at when we talk about beasts. Beasts are teaching particular lessons to humanity. You've got to think of it in a more mythic sense rather than kind of like the problem is do we have to accept that torture or bullying or trolling or all those horrible things teach us something? No, not really. They just teach us that people are horrible. Beasts should be very primal and mythic in the lesson that is taught, and so that means ultimately the pain and destruction and death and whatever a beast does has to have has to feel like it has mythic resonance. So it's not just obviously bad, evil beasts that have lost their way are going to be horrible and just predate on people that don't deserve it. But it has to feel like it's more than that. And it also, I think by doing that, it has to be so that the beasts aren't patting themselves on the back for doing a good job. It has to feel like that they know there is a greater good, but they hate the reason how it has to be brought into being, and they hate how heroes, as an entity, has also sort of that cycle has lost its way, because obviously the new introduction builds upon what heroes should be. They should be wise men that teach communities to learn from the horrible things that happen, so the community becomes stronger and better in whatever ways, perhaps more spiritually balanced.
Right, the example I'd use is how Little Red Riding Hood, the lesson was, stay on the path, don't talk to strangers, but over time it's become,
Kill the
twisted.
beast.
it's been twisted into, don't worry, the woodsman will come and cut the beast open and put rocks in his stomach and toss him in the river.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you're no longer learning a lesson, it's just, a feel-good story where the hero saves the day.
And we venerate the hero, not the lesson.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that they changed that I do like is that beasts see themselves as monstrous. Where, like, they understand that they are not good people and they are not doing good things. In the previous version, there was not really a sense that they were doing something bad. It's just, oh no, we are the primordial horror. We can do this stuff and it's okay.
It's the same way as saying it's a better version we've got now of presenting a character type that comes to accept what they are. And their true nature and not hiding from it, but also accepting that the world may have to change a lot to the point where the monster is no longer a monster, if that makes sense. Where they're no longer viewed as a monster. It's almost like they accept their. It's really hard if you want to try and do a social commentary in here as well. But I think the thing is that in there.
There are people who are trying to ascribe social commentary to it and ascribing marginalized groups to the beast, which I think in a situation where you have heroes who hunt the beasts, that's not really a good path to take.
Yeah.
But I think that the main difference... The one thing that was different in the previous version to this one, which is something that I will go over, is that in the previous version, like I said, the beasts are born and they find their souls. And that is, they become what they were born to be. In this one, beasts aren't really born, but they're not really made. Like, the idea is that some people have a stronger link to the primordial dream than other people. They still have this link to the realm where these lessons exist, that people still remember that these things are, and that occasionally another beast will find these dreamers in the dream and be like, okay, I can make you one of us and you can, help us fix this world, or I can just leave you alone. They make that choice to become a beast. And if they accept it, their soul is devoured and replaced with the horror, which is what makes them into the beasts.
Which is an awesome concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so,
definitely good.
I was going to look at one of the things that in the inspirational media that I found kind of funny when they brought it up, but it does make sense. Is Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which is a hilarious film, but is also a great way of presenting heroes. The thing I was actually going to say about heroes is also you get the feeling that heroes are part of the cycle of the beast, as in they're kind of like a self-regulating part of the myth, as in they keep beasts in check that go beyond what a beast should be doing.
Well, I think the issue with heroes and the thing that the beasts take issue with is that the monstrous beasts that create heroes, but heroes are incapable of telling the difference between the monstrous beasts and the ones who are just trying to do their job.
Yeah.
Another awesome concept.
And also that heroes have, as we said, have lost their sense of place, where they've become the focus, not the lesson.
And that was a problem with the previous version, is they put a lot of focus on subverting the narrative that the beast must become the protagonist and strike down the hero to become the, main character of the cosmic story. But it really didn't come off that well. It just seemed like, oh, no, heroes are the bad guys, I'm the good guy, and I'm going to break the story, and yay, now I'm the protagonist, everything's good again, hooray. Like, there was no real meaning to it besides just this kind of railing against, no, screw you, I'm the hero now.
It was kind of like... It was really weird because it was about inhuman beings doing inhuman things. and that was supposed to be the protagonist. And just on a personal level, I really want to play Lawful Evil or Chaotic Evil D&D games. So,
well,
the
thing is like the previous version would have worked if beasts owned what they were. Like, they weren't doing it for any greater purpose. They weren't doing it for any greater reason. They were a monster, and their end goal was to achieve hypothesis beyond the story and become something even worse. Like, that would be a decent game. But this kind of like, no, we want family, we want friends, we want the mean old heroes to stop killing us, just comes off really weird when you have some of the heroes' preferred feeding methods, like torturing people or kidnapping them and starving them until their family forgets them. And it's like, they release them and it's like, yay, now they love their kid again after I've tortured them for a week. It's like, that's just really tonally dissonant with some of the other things the book is saying.
It'll be interesting to see how these changes we see in later parts of the book. So far we only have the revised introduction. I've also been looking at comments on the Kickstarter page, on the Kickstarter update for this, where the link to the revised introduction is. And obviously some people really latched onto the game and latched onto the problematic aspects of the game in a positive way, as in those are the bits they liked. And they say, oh, well, you're mis-selling things. And, Rich Thomas has basically said, no, we're not mis-selling things. We're actually reinforcing what we wanted the game to be in the first place. And what you've latched onto is something that we didn't want to be in the game anyway. So we're not mis-selling. We're reinforcing what it... Reframing it. So, I'm basically like, well, if people latched onto it because it was latched onto things that were problematic and saw those things as good things of the game, well, tough shit. You can always, if you don't like it, you don't have to pledge for it. You can take back your pledge and bugger off and pledge something else if you want. Who cares?
Mm-hmm. I, on the other hand, are much happier about pledging for this now.
Oh,
so
yeah,
that's always good.
I mean, originally I pledged because I thought, oh, sod it, it'll be good antagonists anyway for any game because it has that crossover element. Now I see that I can play a game of what I feel like this is it's a game of modern mythic monsters, in the sense that you can tell, you can basically reframe classic mythic morality tales in the modern day. In some respects, this is maybe a bit more like the Dark Shadow, the World of Darkness mirror, Dark Reflection to Scion, in that sense, where you're again playing mythic characters.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, cool. So, we've talked about the original. We've talked about some of the updates that are coming out and how we feel about it. But let's, real briefly for people that haven't checked out Beast yet, let's talk about the Beasts themselves, like character creation, the splats, and maybe a few of their powers as well, just to give people a feel. Because I don't think the stuff is going to be changing much, and it seems pretty good as it is. So I think it'd be pretty cool to talk about.
They mentioned that the mechanics probably will not be changing because this is what people have been playtesting for months, and to change them at this point would be too much of an investment. And the fact that the mechanics work, and most of the themes work, they just need to be clarified. And what they're changing are how the beasts are presented, how the relationship between beasts and heroes are presented, and giving the beasts something to do.
So let's just jump into it. So the sort of X splat, the kind of core archetypal splat for the beasts is their family, which sort of defines their general classification. The kind of spirit that inspired the horror that has joined them. And real briefly. Of course, the first one is the Anakim, or the Giants, who are a family that embodies the fear of hopelessness. So these are very judgmental figures that tower above everyone else, very commanding, and sort of inspire fear and belittle others. And they're pretty awesome, pretty judgmental, and kind of just an interesting archetype to play with. And actually, now that I'm thinking about this, there's something just so totally awesome in each of these write-ups for the different splats. And that's the stories section, which gives you like 4 or 5 different origin stories for where the giants came from, or where some of them may have come from, which are just so awesome because they tie in just all these different mythologies, which again I mentioned in the update is something that they brought to the forefront and is just like a really cool and a fun element to explore in this game. So, for example, with the giants, it talks about giants from East Asia. Of course, it discusses the different frost giants and fire giants of Norse mythology, and just gives you so many story hooks in one little handful of paragraphs that can just inspire many stories and different characters, and it's pretty rad. Of course, there is also the Eshmaki, the lurkers, and these guys embody fear of destruction. So usually the sort of nightmares and dreams that they inspire are of an individual that is separated from everyone else, very alone. Another is the Makara, or Leviathans. These are basically sea monsters, and give fears of drowning and fear of the depths of the sea. These guys are pretty rad and have, as you'd assume, very abyssal or watery themed layers. And they inspire dreams of just being stranded out in the water and drowning, or just being overwhelmed and claustrophobia and the like. Others are the Nemtaru, the Gorgons, who embody a fear of revulsion. They're usually fairly hideous if they reveal themselves. Not reveal themselves, but if their atavisms begin to come into play. And these guys are pretty neat, as showing reflections of the ugliness of humanity and the fears that embodies. And then finally, there are the Ugalu, or the Raptors. They embody a fear of exposure, being alone without tools and the inability to survive. So pretty cool stuff.
They also represent the metaphorically being exposed, being caught naked, having your secrets revealed, being lost in the middle of nowhere. They're supposed to be the great flying beasts of myth and legend, like the rocks or phoenixes, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And Matt, do you want to talk about the hungers a little bit?
Sure. There's the hunger for power, the tyrants. They are the ones who lord their power over others, try and let them know that the beast is in charge, and that is how they feed, when someone else feels powerless before them. Then there's the hunger for horde, the collectors. They are the one, they are like the classic dragon sitting atop their pile of gold. They feed by gathering or collecting something that someone else wants. There's a hunger for prey, the predators, the ones who feed by hunting and more often than not killing. Then there's the hunger for punishment, the nemesis. They feed by punishing the guilty, making them know that their crimes are known and that they are being, that someone knows what they have done, that they deserve punishment. And then there's the hunger for ruin, the ravagers. they feed off of destruction, and that can be metaphorical destruction as well, like the destruction of safety, removing the sense that you are okay. Like there's a sample ravager who sneaks into someone's house, breaks their mirror, and carves "You are not safe" into the wall. But the thing that I noticed is that the hungers really overlap. Like tyrants and nemesis kind of fit together. Predators and ravagers do as well. There's not really much distinction between what the different hungers do, and having a different hunger really doesn't give you any kind of benefit. There's no real mechanical change from having one hunger or another.
Yeah, they're not a very strong Y-splat. Usually we see, if you look at Vampire and some other games, usually the Y-splat is more of a political or philosophical orientation. And here, it's more of just a primal, basic need to define your character, which is still perfectly okay. It does help differentiate some characters from each other and kind of gives them an angle for which to interact with life and their existence. Cool. So, of course, every beast has a lair, which is a location, a safe haven, if you will, that exists in the primordial dream. Lairs are interesting, and originally I kind of wanted them to only exist in the real world. I was a little confused about why the primordial dream should even be in the game. But after reading through it, I think it's actually a pretty neat idea. Lairs are cool because they just give you a lot of ability to just play around and create whatever unique base of operations you want for your beast. Putting in different rooms, traps, and defining various abilities for your character. So, Matt, you read more into the mechanics than I did. So, what are some of the cool traits that lairs can give you?
Well, the thing about lairs is lair is the measure of how powerful you are. Like it's the blood potency. The higher your lair goes, the stronger you get, and the more things and the more chambers you can add to your lair, and the more traits you can add to your lair. Now, the way chambers work are like you have the heart, which is where your soul or your horror sleeps when you are not in your lair, and that is where the heart of your lair, where it sits, and if someone can travel there and kill your soul, you will die. But then you have other chambers, which are rooms that have some sort of significance to you, and you can expand your lair whenever you successfully feed on someone and you force them to lose integrity, and you shatter their soul enough that you can take those shattered bits and forge them into a new room in the primordial dream that matches the room where you currently are. Like that sense of fear and terror imprints itself on the room, and then you can take that room and imprint it in the primordial dream. And then each layer has a certain number of traits. Like these are things like poorly lit, or small, or corrosive, on fire, oppressive traits that would be assigned to a scene or a location. And what beasts can do is, if they are in a location that has those traits, they can then bring their lair more closely into the world. So say you are a beast that has the corrosive trait and the dimly lit trait in your lair, and you are in a poorly lit warehouse with flickering lights. You can cause it to just suddenly start raining acid in there. Like that's the primary way that beasts can do combat, is by manipulating the traits of a scene and trying to make it closer to their lair so that they can gain the advantage.
Yeah, that's a pretty awesome and unique thing that we haven't seen before in the World of Darkness. So definitely a really cool mechanic.
Another thing that they can do is, if a location is close enough, is similar enough to one of the chambers in their lair, they can cause their lair to overlay on top of reality, and anyone who tries to leave that room will instead become lost bodily in the primordial dream. And then, like, the beast can just take it away and then leave them trapped there in the dream for their soul to feast upon.
Yep. Cool. So Matt, do you just want to go through some of the other mechanics? You know, maybe feeding a little bit, then move on to atavisms?
Sure. The thing about satiety is that, like you said, is that both low and high are good. Being in the middle is okay, but it leaves you open to having a anathema placed upon you by a hero, which is just something that heroes can do. And if you get afflicted with anathema, it does something to you. Like, it forces you to act in a certain way, or it gives you a weakness to a certain weapon, or it gives you a vulnerability to something. Like, all of the tales where, like, say, the chink in Smog's hide that could be pierced by an arrow, that would be an anathema. And the way that Beast puts it is that they aren't things that existed, they aren't things that heroes find, they are things that heroes create. But since heroes are so lost in the narrative, they are things they think they find. And so that's medium satiety, and beasts don't like to be there. The souls don't like to be there because the souls either want to be hungry and hunting or full and happy. They don't want to be content. Now, at low satiety, you have different traits than at high satiety, and that's where we get the satiety conditions. From 7 to 9, you are gorged. Your soul is lounging happily in the primordial dream. You're more vulnerable to persuasion and suggestion because your soul isn't, forcing you to pay attention. But since your soul is so distracted, you have more control over the nightmares that you can inflict on people. And that's the thing we'll get into later, that nightmares are more powerful when you are full, and atavisms are more powerful than when you're hungry. At low satiety, you are starving, where it makes it harder for you to open up primordial pathways, to travel back to your lair, to travel to other places through the primordial dream. But your atavisms are stronger. And if you actually manage to get into your lair, you add your lair rating to all of your dice rolls. But then the problem is, if you completely run out of satiety or completely fill up with your satiety, you are in trouble. At 0 satiety, you become ravenous. You can no longer feed in the normal way. The only way you can feed is by killing a hero or having your soul go off on its own to inflict nightmares on people, or by feeding with a satiety potential of 8 or more, which is really hard to pull off. And even if you do, you only regain 1 point. Also, becoming ravenous is the only way to shake off an anathema. So if a hero places one on you, the only way to do it is to go down into the depths of hunger and claw your way back out. If you completely fill up, you become slumbering because your soul no longer cares about anything. It is completely full and it is going to sleep. And you lose access to all of your powers. And if you travel back to your lair, you are no longer immune to your own traits. So if your lair is raining acid, which deals an aggravated damage a turn, you have to figure out a way to survive that to get back to your lair to wake up your soul. So you can get really powerful lair traits, but that also makes it more dangerous. That makes being completely full more dangerous.
Yep. No, it's really great use of the conditions mechanic, and overall pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
It's also going to make condition cards super helpful when running Beast.
Mm-hmm. And like and feeding is it's a more complicated mechanic. It mostly depends on how difficult the hunt is, how long you've been planning it. Like, if it's something that you've spent an entire chronicle putting together, you can roll a bunch of dice towards it. Gives you more dice towards the total amount you could get to feed with. The concern that I have with this system is that there's really no reason you would want to do that, because you can't choose not to gain points. If you get too much, then you will go straight into slumbering, which is really dangerous. Like, if you do an exceptional success, it will stop at 9. But if you roll 4 points and you're at 6, then you are basically screwed. So it's really something you'd only want to do when you're starving.
Cool.
Yeah, that's all really lots of information there on it.
Now, as far as atavisms and nightmares, those things I mentioned before, atavisms are physical things you do. And atavisms are always on. They get more powerful when you're at low satiety, and you can spend a point in satiety to make them even stronger. But since you're normally at low health, I mean, you're normally at low satiety anyway, that's probably not a good thing to do. But, like, one of the ones that I like, so the Makara, who are the sea monsters, have an alien allure, so they can make themselves like sirens or mermaids and lure people in. And when they get more hungry, it becomes more effective, and they can force open doors more quickly in social combat. But if they fail, they go straight to hostile. And one of the ones that I really like is the Eshmaki. The Stalkers have one that's Dragon Fire, which just lets them breathe fire.
Yep, super effective.
Mm-hmm. And if they're at low satiety, it turns into a fire machine gun. Nightmares are more like... Nightmares are cool in their own way, in that what you do is you lock eyes with someone and say something, and then either immediately or the next time they fall asleep, then they will be afflicted by the nightmare. And all of them do different things, and they last for a scene, I believe, unless certain conditions are met. And they get more powerful if you have high satiety, and they get even stronger if you spend a satiety. And some of them have good combat traits. Some of them are... There's one called Behold My True Form, which basically allows you to inflict damage in combat by yelling at people. Which is, again, pretty fun. But then there's other ones that are kind of disturbing. Like, there's one called Everything You Do Is Worthless. You're an imposter and everyone can tell. You aren't prepared for this. The only reason you're even here is because of blind luck and happenstance. It's only a matter of time before something comes along and you can't fake it anymore. And there's another one that's you deserve this, which inflicts the guilty condition on you, which makes it so that you feel compelled to confess to everything bad you have ever done, and it doesn't go away for the rest of the scene. And there's one called You Are Meat, which just straight up removes their soul.
Shit. Just that's really nasty against a mage, because if you remove their soul, then they can't really use magic as easily. Yeah, that's pretty mean.
And if they spend a satiety, it's permanent.
Yeah, that would be really bad to a mage. That would be really, really bad to a mage. That would also be really cruel to a Promethean. Who's only just become human.
Oh yeah, that would be terrible.
Right, and I mean, I'm not sure. Did we want to? That's all the mechanics that I've got planned out. So I guess did we want to get into like the last thing about the part about feeding and using nightmares that kind of made a lot of people uncomfortable?
Matt, hit me with it.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. There is a sequence in the book describing how, like, an in-character example of a character feeding. And it involves, like, a person their character is a kindly old lady who, like, basically feeds off of the perpetual fear of the children in her neighborhood and sort of protects them, but also punishes the people who do things, too bad, who do things completely out of character or just really bad. And the example is she finds a teenager who stole candy from kids on Halloween. So she breaks into the kid's house, poisons some candy on his table, not enough to be fatal, but enough to make them very ill, then lurks upstairs until he comes home and starts to throw up. Then she grabs a plastic bag and starts smothering him in his own vomit, then inflicts the "you deserve this" nightmare on him, and then decides that, since it's dark in there, she's able to inflict her lair on there and turn the area into a new chamber, making sure that he never has a good night's sleep again.
Fuck. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so trigger warning. Whoops.
Well, that's kind of the thing. That there are a lot of. That's just one example. There are worse ones. There's an example of a pair of Makara that a collector and a nemesis. The collector gathers things and puts them at the bottom of a lake, and then goes on social media and tells everybody that there's treasure at the bottom of the lake, and then her boyfriend kills them when they show up to collect the treasure, because obviously they're avaricious. There's another one where, like, there are some examples of more benign methods of feeding, but most of them involve, like, really screwed up things that I really wouldn't want a normal player character to be doing.
Yeah, okay, I don't really have any way to follow that up. So, I think in closing, overall, I'm glad that Onyx Path has kind of listened to what people are saying. They're going to take another look at the text overall and work out some of the kinks. I think that's a right choice to make, and should be good. And I'm excited that they're releasing some of the updated text as the Kickstarter goes on. So, any last remarks about Beast?
No, I think Matt's covered a lot of it, and yeah, we can only hope we get to see some more of the revised chapters that cover some of these things. I know there's already some discussion about Homecoming versus Devouring on the comments on Kickstarter. We'll see how that evolves. Yeah.
Like I said, if the example text is a sign of the direction that they're going to be going in the future, and they stay their course, Beast will probably be a game that I would want to play. I'm hopeful, but I'm also reserved considering the text that we've seen so far that was released in the public preview. Like, they have a hill to climb. I think it's entirely within their capability to do it, but I'm not going to say that it's okay yet.
Yeah, okay.
All right, fair enough. Cool. All right, so that's it for Beast, and let's move on to the close of the show. And this has been quite the long episode. So, of course, we are Darker Days Radio. You can check us out at our website at darker-days.org. If you want to get in contact with us, send us an email. I haven't checked our email in like ages. I should probably do that. There's probably a bunch of things sitting in there. You can email us at darkerdaysradio@gmail.com. Now, Chris, if people want to get in contact with us on social media, where are we?
We're on Twitter at Darker Days Radio. We are on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. We are on Google Plus, and we have a Google Plus community that now has 300 members. So feel free to drop by and have some discussion there. What else do we have stuff that's really active? There's some stuff we don't really use too much. I should look at again, but those are the main places to come to. Yeah. I am thinking, Mike, because I've been saying this a few times, and now I actually have my copy with me, that I really need to sort out doing this competition for a copy of...
Oh, that's right. I have a bunch of things to give out.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of Classic World of Darkness things, and we need to do a Classic World of Darkness competition. So I was trying to think of a good thing, a good contest, and I've got it, everyone. Okay. Here's the contest, and there's going to be multiple winners. We're going to, as we have done previously, just talk about the answers on the show, and then randomly determine a series of winners for some classic World of Darkness books. And here is the answer you need to give. And we'll put, we recommend sending us an email at darkerdaysradio@gmail.com. But you could also get in contact with us via Facebook through a message, or also on Google+. But here's the contest. What supernatural type from either Classic World of Darkness or New World of Darkness do you think Matt is?
What?
Yeah. What's Matt? And what is he? Is he Promethean? I don't know. Is he Fomori? Maybe he's a Black Spiral Dancer. Only your answers will tell us what he is. So, I guess we'll announce the winners of the contest maybe in 2 episodes' time, and then we'll send out the prizes. Does that sound good to everyone?
That sounds good. What are they actually going to win? I have a near pristine copy of Midnight Circus to give away.
Very good. Well, I last summer bought a bunch of books just for this contest. So I've got Midnight Circus, I've got Sorcerer, I've got an extra copy of World of Darkness Mafia, which is actually a really phenomenal source book,
awesome.
And a copy of Time of Judgment. So lots of stuff to give out.
I also checked our drive-through RPG account. We have a significant amount of credit there to give away at least a PDF as well. So we might be able to give away a New World of Darkness PDF, maybe?
No way, Chris. This is Classic World of Darkness only. We've had 2 New World of Darkness contests so far. We gotta balance the scales a little bit.
We did give away a Strix Chronicle edition, didn't we?
We gave out that. We gave out the 2 damaged copies I had of Geist and God Machine Chronicles. And actually, didn't we give out Mummy as well?
I don't remember. No, I don't know. Oh, no. But yeah, okay, let's keep it classic.
Roger that. Keep it classic and keep it classy. So that's it for this episode of Darker Days Radio. Thanks for sticking with us for the lengthy episode. But I think we explored a lot of really interesting topics and got some good information out there. So with that, Matt, Chris, thank you very much for joining me. Chig, wherever you are out there, I'm sure you're proud of us. Mm-hmm. And with that, good night.
Yeah, see you guys.